My mom turned my birthday into my sister's because she's sensitive and needs more attention. I packed my bag, slept on benches, and built a life. Now they regret it. Hey Reddit, I never thought my life would turn into one long chain of prove them wrong moments, but that's pretty much what happened. I grew up in a house where my little sister was the star. My mom treated me like background noise, and my dad was miles away working. This isn't just another my parents played favorites story though. It's about how one birthday turned into a fight that lasted years. So, let me paint you the picture of how it all went. I'm 27 now, but this starts when I was 8. I grew up in what you could call a half-normal home. My parents separated when I was about 4. It wasn't some huge fight or dramatic thing that I could remember, just that one day my dad stopped living with us. He was still around, but my mom had custody. She worked part-time and stayed at home with us most of the time. I have one sibling, a younger sister, who was born a little before my parents split. She's 3 years younger than me. Mom always seemed to light up when my sister was around. I was just the older kid who was supposed to handle things. It wasn't like she openly hated me, but you could tell there was a difference. She would go overboard for my sister's birthdays, dance recitals, and whatever hobby she was into at the moment. I didn't think too much about it at first. I was a kid. I liked video games and playing outside. I didn't need anyone to clap for me every second. Dad was the opposite. When he came over, he made a big deal about spending time with me. We'd play soccer in the yard or he'd bring me small gadgets and toys. Nothing crazy, but it felt like he noticed me. He had this habit of giving me little man talks. Even when I was like 6. Things like, you have to look after your sister, or be patient with your mom. My mom's attitude wasn't cruel yet. She just seemed busier or more interested when it came to my sister. If my sister wanted riding lessons, she got them. If I asked for a soccer camp, it was usually too expensive or maybe later. But I didn't think of it as favoritism, just life. Kids believe whatever setup they're born into is normal. By the time I was 8, my friends were a big part of my life. We lived in a decent neighborhood, and I'd hang out with the kids next door and a couple of boys from school. We'd play tag, ride bikes, swap Pokemon cards, simple stuff. That year, I was really looking forward to my birthday. Not because I wanted a huge party, but because it was my one day. My dad had asked me what I wanted, and I told him maybe a new bike or some cool video game. He said he'd see what he could do. My mom told me she'd handle the party. She said she'd make it special, and I believed her. She even asked me what kind of cake I wanted. I picked chocolate with blue icing. She wrote things down and acted like she was really into it. I invited a few friends. Nothing big, maybe 6 or 7 kids. It was supposed to be on a Saturday so everyone could come. Leading up to it, everything felt fine. Mom wasn't acting weird, and my sister didn't seem to care much. She had her own thing going on with her dolls and some horse toys she carried everywhere. I figured it was going to be a normal birthday. A couple of days before the party, I remember overhearing my mom on the phone with my aunt. She was talking about making it a special day for both kids. I didn't think much about it at the time. I figured maybe she just meant my sister would tag along. That's pretty normal when you're the older kid. The night before the party, I was pumped. My dad called to wish me a happy birthday and said he might drop by with something. I was thinking about what game or toy it could be. My mom seemed distracted, but I chalked it up to party planning. The morning came, and I woke up early. My mom told me to wear something nice because people are coming. That sounded exciting. I had this favorite t-shirt with a cartoon robot on it, but she said, no, wear the button-up shirt. And it felt like too much, but I didn't argue. Around noon, I was sitting outside waiting for my friends. Instead of my buddies showing up, the first thing I saw was a small horse trailer pulling into our driveway. A woman got out leading a tiny pony. My mom came out smiling and started fussing over it. I remember thinking, cool, but why? I didn't like horses that much. My sister was jumping up and down. Then a couple of girls about her age arrived, dressed up like princesses. I kept waiting for my friends, but they didn't show. More little girls came. My sister disappeared and came back wearing a Cinderella dress. The decorations around the yard were pink and purple. I started to feel off about it. So I'm standing there in my nice shirt, watching more and more little girls show up. They all had gift bags, balloons, even some wearing tiaras. Every single one walked right past me to my sister. My mom greeted each one like it was some big event. She didn't even look at me except to tell me to move out of the way so the pony could get through the gate. I kept waiting for my friends, thinking maybe she invited them later or something. Noon turned into 12:30. The yard had pink streamers, a table full of princess plates, and a banner that literally said, "Our Little Princess." No mention of me anywhere. My name wasn't on the cake, which was covered in pastel colors and little edible flowers. I finally asked my mom quietly, "Where are my friends?" She just said, "They couldn't make it, but you should be happy we're celebrating as a family." Then she told me to be polite and not ruin things. I was 8, so I didn't know what to say. I just sat on the steps and watched. The pony ride started. My sister was screaming with happiness, going around the yard while everyone clapped. Each kid got a turn. I didn't even get asked if I wanted one. I probably looked miserable because one of the moms asked me, "Aren't you going to ride?" And before I could answer, my mom jumped in, "Oh, he's not interested. He's too grown up for that." The gifts came next. Every single one was some princess toy, horse figurine, or doll. They were all handed to my sister while my mom took pictures. The only thing with my name on it came from my dad. He wasn't there yet, but he'd sent a small package earlier in the week. Mom didn't even let me open it. She set it aside. By this point, I went inside. I sat in my room staring at the wall, feeling this mix of anger and embarrassment. I could hear the music and laughing outside. Nobody came looking for me, not even my sister. Around 3 p.m., my dad finally showed up. I heard his voice and it was like a relief. I came down, and the first thing he did was ask me why I wasn't outside. I didn't answer. He stepped into the yard and stopped. He saw the decorations, the pony, the little girls, and his face changed. "Whose party is this?" he asked. My mom said, "It's for both of them. They're sharing." He looked at me and then at my sister, who was opening another gift. "Doesn't look like sharing," he said. He pulled me aside and asked quietly, "Did you get any presents? Did your friends come?" I shook my head. He didn't say anything for a moment. He went to his car and came back with a big box. He gave it to me right there, in the middle of the pink yard. It was a brand new bike, the kind I'd been pointing at for months. When he handed it to me, my mom started saying, "Really? He doesn't need that right now. You're just spoiling him." My dad just looked at her and said, "It's his birthday." That was the first time I really felt there was some line drawn. My mom didn't smile, didn't clap. She went quiet for a while, then started cleaning up plates like she was annoyed. The girls kept playing, but the mood for me was just off. I rode the bike up and down the driveway a couple times, but it didn't feel like a birthday should. By late afternoon, the pony left and the parents picked up their kids. My sister was glowing, sitting with a pile of toys around her. My mom hugged her and kept saying, "What a great day." She didn't say anything to me. When the last guest left, my dad stayed. He sat with me in the living room and asked again what happened. I told him the truth, that I invited friends, but my mom didn't call them, and the whole thing was for her. He was quiet, then said, "I'm sorry. That shouldn't have happened." Mom came in and heard part of it. She immediately got defensive. "They're kids. It's just a party. He needs to learn to share. She's younger. She needs the attention." They went back and forth for a while. I sat there listening. My dad kept his voice calm, but you could hear the anger. "You don't do this to a kid on his birthday," he said. "I'm not going to let this slide again." They argued more after I went upstairs. I heard bits and pieces, spending too much money. Trying to show off? You only come around to play hero. It was the first time I really heard them fight about me. When my dad finally left that evening, he gave me another hug and said, "We'll talk soon, okay? Keep that bike safe." It stuck with me. That night, I opened the small package. It was a handheld game from Dad. I remember holding it in my room, thinking it was the only thing that actually had my name on it. I sat in my room looking at the bike through the window. My sister's gifts were piled in the corner of the living room. My mom didn't come up to say goodnight. That was when something shifted. I didn't know it at the time, but that birthday was the moment I stopped expecting anything from her. A few months later, my dad came by less often because of work. He told me he had an overseas contract and would be gone for a long time. I was 9 when he left, and even though he promised to call and send letters, it wasn't the same. Once he was gone, the house really became my mom's world, and she made it clear she was in charge. My sister could get away with anything. My mom's energy went into my sister's hobbies. She got riding lessons, ballet classes, and later piano. Weekends were full of events for her. My mom loved to invite people over to show her off. I'd be in the background, usually asked to take pictures or help carry stuff. School was my escape. I liked being with my friends, but even there, it was hard sometimes. My mom wasn't really interested in school meetings or events for me. She showed up for my sister's recitals and open houses, though. Teachers even noticed. One teacher asked once if my mom was coming to parent night. I just shrugged. Then something changed. My sister started to get older too, and my mom's expectations got heavier. She pushed her harder. More lessons, more pressure about school and friends. I could see my sister getting stressed, but she didn't fight back. At 15, I had my first real argument with my mom. It was over money. I'd been saving up to buy a used laptop because the one at home was basically hers and my sister's. When I mentioned it, she snapped and said, "Why do you need that? Everything is about you needing something?" That one line stuck with me because it felt like everything wasn't about me at all. My dad would call now and then. He asked about school, friends, sports. I never told him much because I didn't want to sound like I was complaining. Sometimes he'd send money for birthdays or Christmas. Mom controlled it. She'd say, "We'll use this for something important," and usually that meant bills or something for my sister. One summer when I was 16, my dad visited for a short trip. He took me out to lunch, just the two of us. I told him a little about home. Not everything, but enough. He listened and didn't say much. But before he left, he gave me a small envelope. Inside was $200 and a note that said, "For your goals. Don't tell your mom." That was the first time I realized he knew more than I thought. That money became my little safety net. I used some to fix up an old bike, some to buy books and things for school. My sister never knew. Around that same time, I started working weekends at a grocery store. Bagging, stocking, whatever they needed. It wasn't much, but it gave me something. I kept my earnings hidden, just in case. Looking back, there were good moments. My sister wasn't mean. She just lived in a different world under my mom's wing. Sometimes we'd watch TV together or joke about school. But there was always this line between us. And it wasn't her fault or mine. It was just how the house was set up. By the time I turned 17, I was already thinking about escape plans. College, internships, anything. I wanted out. My dad's calls were the only times I felt like someone believed I could do something bigger. Mom's voice was always about being responsible, but never about what I wanted. Senior year started, and I already had one goal in mind. I didn't care if it was a dorm, another state, another country. I just wanted to leave that house. I kept my grades up because I knew scholarships were my best shot. I didn't have money saved for tuition. What I earned from the grocery store was pocket change compared to what I needed. I spent afternoons in the school library filling out applications. I didn't tell my mom every detail because I knew how she would react. She always had something to say whenever I mentioned wanting to leave. She'd make comments like, "Why do you need to go so far? There are community colleges here." Or, "College is expensive. You think money grows on trees." I learned to keep things quiet, but eventually she found out. One night she came into my room while I was printing out some forms. She picked up a packet and read the header. "Out of state?" she said, raising her voice. "Who said you could apply to schools out of state? We can't afford that." I told her I was trying for scholarships and financial aid. She shook her head and said, "You're dreaming. Those things are for kids with perfect grades and special circumstances. And who's going to help your sister if you leave? Who's going to help me? You're being selfish." That word, selfish, hit hard. I kept calm and explained that I wanted a future, that I didn't want to be stuck in town. She cut me off. "Stuck? What's wrong with this house? You think you're better than us?" Then she said something I'll never forget. "You're not going anywhere. You'll waste time and money, and you'll come crawling back." End of discussion. After that night, she started keeping a closer eye on me. Mail from colleges? She'd open it first, by mistake. Phone calls from unknown numbers? She'd pick up. She even told a family friend that I was getting ahead of myself. It was like she wanted to control every step. Around this time, my dad called more often. I told him I was applying everywhere and that I needed advice. He said, "Keep doing it. Don't let anyone stop you." I think he knew my mom would push back. He offered to help pay application fees if I needed it. I didn't tell her that part. As deadlines came closer, I spent every free moment writing essays and filling forms. My sister noticed something was going on, but she didn't ask much. She was busy with her activities and end-of-year ballet and piano recitals. Mom kept reminding me about chores, about being home more. I'd nod and go back to the library. The real fight came a month before graduation. I got an email saying I'd been waitlisted for a good school and invited for an interview for a scholarship. I was excited. I printed it out and left it on my desk. That was my mistake. When I came home from work that night, the paper was gone. My mom was sitting in the kitchen with it in her hand. "What is this?" she asked. I said it was an opportunity. She put it down hard on the table and said, "Opportunity? Do you even know how much it costs to live on your own? Do you know how many kids fail? You think you'll make it? You can barely keep this house clean." I told her calmly, "It's my decision. I'm 18 soon. I'm going to try." She stood up and said, "Not while you live under my roof. I will not let you waste money we don't have. You want to throw your life away? Do it somewhere else." It turned into yelling. She said I was ungrateful, that I didn't care about my family. She brought up every small thing, how she raised me alone, how my dad only showed up to look good, how I was cold compared to my sister. I stayed quiet for as long as I could, then said, "Maybe if you listened, you'd know I've been trying my best. You never cared what I wanted." That shut the room down. My sister came out of her room because of the noise. She just stood there, silent. My mom told me to go to my room. I went, but I knew then that I was leaving no matter what. After that night, things got colder. She barely spoke to me unless it was about chores. I kept applying. I got rejection after rejection, and some schools didn't respond at all. It was rough. I felt like maybe she was right, that I wasn't good enough. But the idea of staying there felt worse than failing. So I made a choice. I started setting money aside. Tips, extra hours, anything. I kept an old backpack ready. I didn't have a plan, but I knew I'd leave. By graduation, nothing had changed between us. No congratulations, just a handshake and a don't forget to help around here. The day I turned 18, I gave it one last shot with another scholarship application. When it didn't work out, I decided that was it. I packed a few clothes, my old laptop, and whatever cash I had saved. I didn't tell anyone. I waited until she left for errands, and I walked out the door. I left the house on a warm morning with one backpack. I had maybe a couple $100 in cash, my old phone, some clothes, and the laptop my dad helped me buy used. It didn't feel like freedom yet, just like moving fast before I changed my mind. I took the bus to a city about 4 hours away. I'd never been there, but I figured a bigger place meant more chances. The first hours felt good. The bus ride was quiet, and I kept thinking about all the things I'd do. I planned to find a cheap room, maybe a shared apartment, and start working somewhere right away. But plans collapse fast when you're 18 and alone. The first problem came as soon as I stepped off the bus. I went into a small cafe to grab a drink and use the bathroom. When I came out, my backpack was gone. Someone had taken it. I ran around like an idiot, asked a few people if they saw anything, but no one did. Everything I owned, money, laptop, clothes, gone in seconds. I had maybe $20 in my pocket from buying snacks earlier. That was it. The next days were rough. The first night I stayed at the bus station, sitting upright on a metal bench. I kept my phone and the little cash I had in my pocket and barely slept. The second night I walked around until late and then found a corner behind a closed store with a wide overhang. It kept the wind off, but it was cold and loud. The third night I slept in a small park on a bench, close to a light pole because it felt safer. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept waking up to footsteps or voices. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. By the fourth day, I started asking for work. I walked block after block, stopping at diners, shops, gas stations. Most places wanted applications online. Some just said no. The few that talked to me looked at me like I was just another kid passing through. I was too young to get serious work, and I didn't have any ID with me now. It was in the stolen bag. Around noon, I found a small family-owned restaurant. It was old, with faded red paint and a big chalkboard menu. I walked in and asked if they needed help. The guy behind the counter was maybe in his 60s. He looked at me for a long time and said, "We don't hire strangers." I told him I'd do anything. Clean tables, wash dishes. He shook his head. Too many kids come in asking that. They quit after 2 days. I don't need the headache. I left. But something about that place stuck with me. This restaurant felt like my only shot. It was the kind of under-the-table kitchen work where nobody asked for paperwork. So I went back the next day, stood outside until the lunch rush started, and waited for him to come out for a smoke. When he did, I went up again. I told him my story, straight. That I left home because I wanted to build something. That I'd been sleeping in the bus station and on benches since I got here. And that I wasn't asking for charity. I said I'd work for food if that's all he could give. He didn't buy it right away. "Everyone's got a story," he said. "How do I know you won't take off with the till?" I told him I'd clean the bathroom right now if he wanted proof. He stared at me like he was deciding if I was worth the trouble. Then he just went back inside. I could have walked away, but I didn't. That night, I swept the sidewalk in front of his place without asking. Nobody told me to, but I wanted him to see I was serious. When he came to open the next morning, he saw me sitting there with the broom leaning against the wall. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at the clean sidewalk and unlocked the door. I followed him inside and said, "Give me 1 day. If I mess up, I'll leave." He didn't answer right away. He poured himself coffee, stood there thinking, then finally said, "Fine. No pay, no food until you finish your shift. If you're good, we'll talk." That first day was brutal. I washed dishes until my hands hurt. I cleaned the kitchen, wiped tables, carried heavy boxes. He didn't make it easy either. He checked everything I did. By closing time, I was starving. He finally handed me a plate of leftover pasta and said, "Come back tomorrow, 7 a.m., don't be late." It wasn't a job yet, but it was something. Over the next week, he kept me on the same deal. Work first, mostly food for payment. When he saw I kept showing up, he started slipping me a little cash each night. When I left at night, I went back to the same corner behind the store or the park bench. It wasn't much, but at least I had food in me. After the fourth day, he asked my name and age. On the fifth day, he asked if I could handle more than dishes. By the second week, he told me, "You want a cot? There's a small room upstairs. It's nothing fancy, but it's better than the street." I said yes before he changed his mind. It was a narrow room with a bed and a little desk. To me, it was everything. That was the first time in over a week I slept without looking over my shoulder. Now, I'd been working at the restaurant for almost 6 months when I heard from my dad again. He called out of the blue. My phone, the same old one, barely held a charge, but I picked up. He sounded excited and said he was back in the country for good. He wanted to visit. I froze because I hadn't told anyone where I was. I gave him a small lie, said I was busy with work, that I'd explain later. He said, "Work? Where?" I dodged the question, said I'd call him soon and hung up. 2 weeks later, my dad showed up at my mom's house, expecting to see me. That's when it all started. I wasn't there, obviously, and my mom had no idea where I'd gone. She thought I was at a friend's, or maybe just avoiding her. My sister was the one who broke the news. He left after graduation. I didn't see any of this, but my sister filled me in later. Dad didn't take it well. He kept asking, "Where is he? Why didn't anyone tell me? Why wasn't I called?" My mom shrugged and said, "He wanted to leave. He's always been dramatic." That's when things exploded. My dad had spent years away working to send money back. He said, "Dramatic? He's my son. How did you let him walk out the door?" My mom shot back, "He's stubborn like you, always wanting more than what's reasonable." He wouldn't listen. Dad asked if she even tried to stop me. She said, "Why should I?" He wanted to run off to chase some dream. He thinks he's smarter than everyone. Dad lost it then. He reminded her of every call he'd made, every time he asked about me. He accused her of never supporting me, only favoring my sister. My sister told me she'd never seen them fight like that. Dad's voice was loud but steady, while Mom got sharper and louder with every sentence. She said, "You don't get to judge me. You were gone. I was here raising them. I dealt with everything while you lived your life somewhere else." Dad said, "Don't twist this. I left to work because we needed it. I trusted you to be fair to both kids. You didn't. You made him feel like he was nothing." Mom slammed her hands on the table and said, "I gave him food, a roof, school. What else did he want? He was always ungrateful. Dad, he wanted support. He wanted a chance. And you crushed it because you were too busy making her your little queen." That's when my sister stepped in. She told me later, she said quietly, "It's true. You were harder on him." My mom turned on her. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're a child." My sister said, "I saw everything. He worked jobs. He stayed out of your way. You barely cared." Dad kept pressing. "Where would he go with nothing? Did you even check? Did you call me? Did you call anyone?" My mom said, "He's 18, not a baby. He wanted to act grown, so I let him." The fight went back and forth like that for over an hour. My mom dug in, blaming me for being cold and distant, blaming Dad for being absent, blaming money. Dad kept coming back to the same point. "You lost him because you didn't care enough to keep him." Finally, my dad said, "I'll find him. Don't call me unless it's about the kids. And don't blame me when he never comes back here." He left. I didn't know any of this until a day later when my dad called me again. His voice was different. "Where are you?" I told him the truth this time. I said I was working at a small restaurant, staying upstairs in a tiny room. There was a pause. Then he said, "Stay there. I'm coming." He showed up 2 days later. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when the old man, my boss, said, "There's someone here for you." I walked out and saw him. He looked older, a bit tired, but when he saw me, he smiled like nothing else mattered. He didn't yell, didn't scold. He just hugged me. Then he stepped back and said, "Why didn't you tell me?" I said, "I didn't want to bother you, and I didn't want to hear that I couldn't do it." He looked around the restaurant. "This is where you've been?" I nodded. I told him everything, losing my stuff, sleeping at the bus station, getting the job. He listened and didn't interrupt. When I finished, he turned to my boss and said, "Thank you for giving him a chance." The old man said, "He earned it. He's stubborn, but he works." My dad laughed at that and said, "Yeah, he gets it from me." After we closed that night, Dad and I went for a walk. He asked me if I wanted to come live with him. He'd rented a place now that he was back. Small, but enough. I hesitated but said yes. The restaurant had saved me, but I wanted stability, and I trusted him. Before we left, I thanked the old man again. He told me, "Don't waste the chance." People don't get many. When we got to Dad's place, he sat me down and said, "I know I wasn't around enough. That won't happen again. Whatever you want to do, college, work, whatever, I'll back you." It felt strange to hear that. For the first time, I believed him. Moving in with my dad felt like stepping into a different world. His place was small, one bedroom and a pull-out couch for me. But it felt like home the first night. He didn't treat me like I was a burden. He treated me like someone worth investing in. He asked about my plans and didn't laugh when I said college. He just said, "We'll make it work." The first thing he did was help me get new documents and ID since I'd lost everything when my bag got stolen. Then he opened a small savings account with me. He said, "Put something in here every week, even if it's $10. Build it up." I kept working at the restaurant part-time. The old man didn't mind. He said I could come in on weekends. During the week, my dad pushed me to focus on school. He found community programs that helped with college prep. I applied to more places, this time with his help. We sat at the kitchen table filling out forms. He paid the application fees without blinking. When the first acceptance came, a small college 2 states away, I couldn't believe it. I showed him the email, and he grinned like he'd won something. We kept going, applying for scholarships and aid. He even drove me to interviews, sometimes 2 hours away. I didn't get everything I wanted, but by the time fall rolled around, I had enough support to start. The day I moved into the dorm, he said, "No matter what, call me if you need me. I'll be there." Those words stuck. Life moved fast after that. College was tough, but I handled it. I worked part-time jobs, took classes seriously, and stayed close to my dad. My sister started texting me here and there. At first, it was small stuff. "Hey, how's school?" or "Miss you." I could tell she was different. She never took sides before, but now she seemed to want a connection. The biggest surprise came when my mom reached out. It was during my second year. She called and left a long voicemail. It started off casual, then went into, "I miss you. The house feels empty. Your sister talks about you all the time. Maybe you can come for dinner?" I didn't answer right away. I talked to my dad about it. He said, "It's your call. Just remember how you were treated." I didn't feel angry anymore, just cautious. I sent a short reply. "I'm busy, but thanks." As the years went on, the gap between us stayed. My sister kept being friendly, even visiting campus once. She admitted one night, "Mom was too hard on you. I see it now. She's hard on me now too." It was strange to hear that, but I didn't gloat. I just said, "Yeah, it was rough." The real karma came slowly. My sister told me that after I left, my mom started leaning on her more. The praise turned into pressure. My sister was expected to do everything perfectly. They fought often. My sister eventually moved out at 19, saying she couldn't take it anymore. By the time I graduated, things had changed. I walked across the stage, and the first person I saw cheering was my dad. The old restaurant owner even came and clapped from the back row. My sister sent a picture with, "Proud of you." My mom didn't show. Work life started quick after college. I landed an internship that turned into a job. Money wasn't huge at first, but I was on my own. My dad loved hearing about every step. He'd say, "I told you, you just needed someone to back you up." One day, maybe a year after starting my job, my mom called again. This time she was soft-spoken. "I just want to see you," she said. "We all make mistakes." I agreed to meet for coffee, but I kept it short. I wasn't cruel, but I didn't pretend everything was fine. She talked mostly about herself, about how hard it was without me there. I listened, nodded, and left. I didn't need her approval anymore. The distance taught me that family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up. My dad showed up. Even my sister eventually. My mom? She was part of the past. A few months later, my niece was born, my sister's daughter. I went to the hospital, held her, and felt happy. My sister hugged me and said, "She's going to know you, I promise." That felt good. Sometimes I think back to that birthday party when I was 8. The pony, the pink decorations, me sitting on the steps wondering why no one cared. It's not pain anymore, just a reminder of where I started. Now, I have my own apartment. I still talk to my dad almost every day. My sister visits with her kid. My mom sends cards sometimes, but I keep things polite and distant. Mom ended up alone in the house she once controlled. My sister built her own life, and I built mine. The difference is, I know now what I want and what I won't tolerate. Everything came full circle. The kid no one celebrated now had something better than a party. He had a life he chose. After I collapsed at work, Dad called me and asked if the $2,500 allowance was enough. What allowance? I said. He went dead silent. Turns out Mom had been sending it to my brother for his modded car and gaming rig. All right, Reddit. I know the title might be messy, but that's what happened. My mom had been stealing my monthly allowance for 6 months to bankroll my brother's lifestyle, while I worked 3 jobs until I collapsed face first into a stack of dirty dishes. Real subtle. I would not recommend. I'm Elias, 24 male, second-year med student at Northwestern in Chicago. Moved here from Phoenix about 18 months ago, chasing the dream of becoming a trauma surgeon like my dad. He works at a major hospital back in Arizona, pulling in good money, and growing up, we lived a comfortable life. Money was never something we worried about. Then, I moved to Chicago, and suddenly I was drowning. My parents covered tuition, which is huge since Northwestern isn't cheap, but everything else was supposedly on me. Rent in a crappy studio apartment in a sketchy neighborhood, food, books, transportation, all of it. And Chicago doesn't mess around with cost of living. So I started hustling, tutoring undergrads who couldn't be bothered to study, working as a line cook at a sports bar 4 nights a week, picking up weekend shifts at a medical supply warehouse. Sometimes I'd work from 6 a.m. to past midnight, catch 4 hours of sleep, then drag myself to an 8 a.m. anatomy lecture. The exhaustion was crushing. I'd fall asleep during classes, wake up with a drool on my notebook, and no idea what I'd missed. My grades were sliding from A's to C's. I was eating maybe 1 real meal a day, filling the gaps with gas station coffee and whatever cheap carbs I could afford. Living the dream, baby. My friends noticed I was falling apart. One of them, Derek, cornered me after class one day and straight up asked if I was okay. I brushed him off, said I was handling it, just needed to grind through the semester. But I wasn't handling anything. I was barely surviving. Meanwhile, my brother Lucas, 23 years old and supposedly enrolled in some business program at USC, was living like a trust fund kid in Los Angeles. I'd see his Instagram posts. New gaming setup with 3 curved monitors and a custom PC that probably cost $5,000. Posting videos of his Dodge Challenger with fresh modifications, carbon fiber hood, custom exhaust, upgraded suspension. Every few weeks there'd be another post showing off some new piece of gear or another upgrade to his car. I wasn't jealous exactly, more confused. How was Lucas affording all that on a student budget while I was eating ketchup packets for lunch? Yeah, he wasn't. I'd asked my mom for help a few times. Just a couple $100 a month to ease the pressure. She'd shut me down every time. Said Dad's hospital had reduced his hours, money was tight, they were barely covering our tuitions. I believed her because why wouldn't I? She's my mom. So I kept grinding. Picked up a 3rd job doing overnight inventory at a pharmacy. That's when things got bad. It was a Tuesday night at the sports bar, middle of dinner rush. We were slammed. Orders backing up, tickets printing faster than we could cook, servers yelling for food. I was working the grill station, flipping burgers with one hand and checking tickets with the other. The kitchen was hot as heck, probably pushing 95 degrees. I'd been there since 4 p.m. after a full day of classes. Before that, I'd worked the warehouse shift from 6 a.m. to noon. I was plating an order when the room started tilting. I tried to grab the counter, but my legs just quit. Next thing I remember is the head chef's face hovering over me, asking if I could hear him. Then paramedics. Then fluorescent hospital lights. The ER doctor told me I'd collapsed from severe exhaustion and acute malnutrition. Said my blood work looked like someone who'd been living in a famine zone. They pumped me full of IV fluids and made me eat a hospital sandwich before they'd let me leave. The bill was $1,200 that I absolutely did not have. My manager at the bar called the next day. Said he'd been the one to call 911 and that he'd also called my parents since I had them listed as my emergency contact. Then he told me to take the next 2 weeks off because I was clearly running myself into the ground, and he didn't need the liability. Great. 2 weeks without income from my highest-paying job. Derek showed up at my apartment that night with groceries and refused to leave until I ate something real. While I was eating the pasta he'd made, he started asking questions about my financial situation. When I explained that I wasn't getting any help from home, he looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Dude, your dad's a surgeon. Why aren't they helping you? Mom says money's tight. Tight enough that your brother can afford a custom gaming rig and a modded-out Challenger? And that's when something clicked. Derek pulled up Lucas's Instagram, and we started going through his posts from the past 6 months. The gaming setup, the car mods, the expensive dinners at trendy LA restaurants, the VIP section at clubs, a weekend trip to Vegas with his buddies. Derek did some quick math based on what he could see. Dude, your brother's burned through at least 30 or 40 grand in the last 6 months. Probably more. Where's he getting that kind of money? I didn't have an answer, but I was darn sure going to find out. Turns out, when you follow the money trail, sometimes it leads straight to your own family robbing you blind. Fun times ahead. I started with Lucas directly. Called him up acting casual, asked how he was affording everything. He got defensive immediately, said it was none of my business, and that mom helped him out sometimes. When I pushed, he hung up on me. Real mature. So I called Dad at work. He was on rounds but called me back during his break, concerned because Mom had told him about my collapse. Are you doing okay, son? Your mother said you fainted at work. Yeah, I'm fine. Just been working a lot. Son, why? Is the monthly $2,500 not enough? I froze. What are you talking about? Silence. Long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Elias, I've been transferring $2,500 into your account every month since you started school. Your monthly allowance. My stomach dropped. What allowance? Dad, I haven't received anything. Not a single deposit. What the heck do you mean you haven't been receiving it? More silence. Then his voice came back. Different. Cold. I need to go. Don't say anything to your mother yet. I'm flying up this weekend. He hung up, and I sat there in my crappy apartment, doing the math. $2,500 a month for 18 months. That's $45,000. Money that was supposed to keep me fed and housed and focused on school. Money that had just disappeared. I spent the next 3 days digging. Checked my bank account history going back 2 years. Nothing. Not a single deposit from my parents, except for random small amounts here and there that I'd asked for. Derek helped me create a detailed timeline of Lucas's purchases based on his social media. Gaming PC in March, first car mod in April, new exhaust system in May, custom wheels in June, full suspension upgrade in August, a $3,000 gaming chair in September. We screenshot everything, saved it all to Google Drive. Then Derek said something. If your dad's been sending money and you haven't gotten it, that means someone's been intercepting it. That's not just lying, man. That's fraud. That's like a felony. I'd been thinking of this as family drama, favoritism, bad parenting. But Derek was right. This was theft. That Friday, Dad flew into Chicago without telling Mom. Showed up at my apartment at 8 p.m. looking like he'd aged 5 years since I'd last seen him. Show me everything, he said. If you've ever wanted to watch a surgeon methodically dissect a crime scene, let me tell you, it's exactly as intense as it sounds. Dad sat at my tiny kitchen table studying printouts like he was reading x-rays, bank statements showing 0 deposits, screenshots of Lucas's Instagram posts with dates and estimated costs, the timeline Derek and I had built. Your mother handles all our household finances, Dad said quietly. I transfer my paycheck into our joint account, and she manages everything from there. Bills, your tuitions, day-to-day expenses. I trusted her. I've been transferring your living allowance to an account I thought was yours. She set it up, gave me the account number, told me it was linked to your checking account. So, where's the money actually going? We'll find out. Dad spent the night on my couch, and the next morning we went to his bank. He had them pull records for every transfer he'd made to my supposed account. There it was in black and white. $2,500 every month for 18 months, plus an initial deposit of $5,000 when I'd first moved to Chicago. Total, $50,000. 50 grand. My brother had burned through $50,000 of my money on a gaming chair and car parts. The account number didn't match mine, not even close. The banker confirmed the transfers had gone through successfully to the account number on file, but couldn't disclose who actually owned the account without proper legal paperwork, privacy laws or whatever. You'll need a court order, she said. If you suspect fraud, file a police report. We left the bank with printed records of every transfer. Dad called his lawyer from the parking lot. Then we spent the afternoon at the police station. He filed a detailed report. Suspected financial fraud, unauthorized diversion of funds, possible identity theft. The detective said it was straightforward enough and that they'd freeze the account while investigating. A week later, the court order came back. The account was jointly held by Diane Thornton and Lucas Thornton, both with full access. My mother and brother, working together, for 18 months. The frozen account had $11,247 in it. The rest, nearly $40,000, had already been spent. On what, you ask? Gaming equipment and making Lucas's Challenger look like it belonged to a Fast and Furious extra. Money well spent, clearly. Dad stood up fast. He pulled records for every account he shared with Mom. Credit cards, savings, investment accounts, everything. He found more problems immediately. Cash advances from their credit cards, totaling another $15,000 over the past year. Withdrawals from their savings that Dad hadn't authorized. She's been siphoning funds from multiple sources, Dad said. This isn't just your living expenses. She's been stealing from our retirement accounts. We ordered food that night and kept working. Dad called a lawyer friend back in Phoenix, explained the situation. The lawyer was blunt. What Mom had done was financial fraud, identity theft, and potentially elder abuse since she'd forged Dad's signature on several withdrawal forms. I want her to know that option's on the table, Dad said. Sunday morning, Dad called Mom and told her we were both flying home to Phoenix that afternoon for a family meeting. She tried to protest. Dad cut her off. This isn't optional, Diane. We'll be there by 6 p.m. Have Lucas there too. Nothing says quality family time like an ambush with legal documents and a side of existential dread. We landed in Phoenix at 5:30 p.m. Lucas's Challenger was in the driveway. Mom opened the door looking nervous. Michael, Elias, this is unexpected. Where's Lucas? Dad's voice was flat. In his room. Michael, what's this about? Get him. Living room. Now. She hurried upstairs and came back with Lucas, who looked annoyed at being interrupted. He had the audacity to be wearing a $200 gaming headset around his neck. We sat. Dad opened his folder and pulled out bank statements. Diane, do you know what account number this is? Mom glanced at the paper, and something flickered across her face. I'm not sure. Why? It's the account you told me was Elias's living expense account. Dad's voice was calm, precise. Except it's not Elias's account, is it? It's a joint account held by you and Lucas. Would you like to explain why Elias's living expenses have been going into Lucas's account instead? Lucas shifted in his seat. Dad continued. $50,000, Diane. Where did it go? Lucas spoke up, trying for casual. Look, Mom said you'd approved. Don't. Dad's voice was sharp. Don't lie to me! He pulled out his phone and started scrolling through screenshots. Custom gaming PC, carbon fiber hood, custom exhaust, suspension upgrade, custom wheels, gaming chair. That's over 20 grand right there, and that's just what he posted publicly. Lucas has needs too, Mom said defensive. He's building a career in business. He needs to present a certain image. He's 23 years old playing video games and modding his car, Dad interrupted. While his brother was working 3 jobs and collapsed from malnutrition. Elias passed out at work, Diane. The ER doctor said he looked like a famine victim. Lucas looked uncomfortable. Mom looked like she was the victim here. Because of course she did. You've always favored Elias, she shot back. Lucas needed support too. So you stole it from Elias? From our retirement accounts? Yes, Diane. I found those withdrawals too. $15,000 in unauthorized cash advances. Another $20,000 from our savings. Dad leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, you and I are closing that fraudulent account. Every remaining dollar goes to Elias's actual account. You're being removed from all our joint accounts. And Lucas's access to family money ends today. Completely. You can't do that. Lucas stood up. That's my money. It's money stolen from your brother while he was starving. Sit down. Lucas sat. We're also having a conversation with a lawyer, Dad continued. Because you're looking at serious charges, Diane. Mom's face went white. You wouldn't. Try me. The next morning, Dad and I went to the bank while Mom stayed home. The bank manager confirmed what we already knew and explained the account would remain frozen during the fraud investigation. Back at the house, Mom had apparently decided her best defense was a good offense. We walked in to find her on the phone, crying to someone about how Dad was financially abusing her. Dad waited until she hung up. Who was that? My sister. Someone who actually cares about what happens to me. Here's the situation, Dad continued. I've frozen the fraudulent account. I've removed you from our joint checking and savings. You'll have access to one credit card with a $500 monthly limit for essentials. The mortgage is paid. Utilities are handled. You're not being left destitute. But your free access to family money is over. This is controlling behavior. You can't do this. I can and I am. You committed fraud. You stole from our son. Dad pulled out his phone. I have a lawyer on retainer. He's drafting divorce papers. You'll be served within the week. Mom's face crumpled. The tears looked fake. Divorce papers? Michael, have you lost your mind? You're throwing away 25 years of marriage over a misunderstanding? I spoke up. Mom, I collapsed at work because I hadn't eaten a real meal in 3 days. I was working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night. My grades were failing. While you were sending my money to Lucas for gaming equipment. That's not a misunderstanding. She turned on me, all pretense gone. You were always fine. You're smart, capable. Lucas needed help. He's not like you, Elias. Lucas is not a kid. He should have been helping himself. The gaming equipment helps him network with people in the business community. He plays Fortnite, Mom. He's not networking with business people. The car modifications are an investment. In business, appearance... Enough, Dad interrupted her. This conversation is over. I'm filing for divorce. Elias is getting every dollar that was stolen from him, with interest. And Lucas's trust distributions are being suspended indefinitely. That got her attention. You can't touch his trust fund. I will not let you. I control distributions until he turns 30. The trust allows me to withhold payments for financial irresponsibility or illegal activity. Lucas has done both. Lucas's trust was worth about $180,000, set up by our grandparents. Mine was the same. Dad couldn't take the principal, but he could absolutely refuse distributions and deduct what Lucas owed from future payouts. You're a monster, Mom hissed. No, Diane. I'm a father protecting his son from his own mother. I stayed in Phoenix for 3 more days, while Dad got everything in order legally. The divorce papers were filed. Lucas tried calling me twice. I let it go to voicemail both times. The first message was angry, saying I was ruining his life by telling Dad lies. The second one was whiny, asking me to fix this because his credit cards weren't working. I flew back to Chicago with $11,247 in my bank account and a promise from Dad that he'd send my living expenses directly from now on. Plus, he'd paid my rent 3 months in advance and dropped $2,000 in my account as an apology. For the first time in months, I could breathe. I quit the warehouse job and cut back my bar shifts to just 2 nights a week. Kept the tutoring because I actually enjoyed it. Suddenly, I had time to study, to sleep, to eat real food. My professors noticed the difference immediately. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. You know what toxic people hate more than consequences? Actually facing those consequences. I should have known Mom and Lucas wouldn't just accept consequences and move on. That's not how toxic people work. They double down. 3 weeks after the confrontation, weird things started happening. Someone tried to access my student account at Northwestern. The IT department caught it because the login attempt came from LA, Lucas's location. They flagged it and locked my account. Then my landlord called saying someone had contacted him, claiming to be from my family, saying I'd been hospitalized and wouldn't be able to pay rent, asking if they could work out a payment plan where they'd take over my lease. My landlord told them to pound sand but gave me a heads up. Derek suggested I check my credit report. Good call. Someone had tried to open a credit card in my name using my social security number. Application was denied because the address didn't match, but the attempt was there, filed in LA, with Lucas's zip code. Dude, your brother's trying to steal your identity, Derek said. This is beyond family drama. I called Dad immediately. He was not surprised. Your mother's been calling me daily trying to negotiate. Says Lucas is having trouble finding work. Yesterday she threatened to sue me for spousal support. Can she do that? She can try. But given the documented fraud, she won't get far. He paused. Elias, I think they're going to escalate. Watch your back. He was right. 2 days later, Northwestern's financial aid office called me in. The administrator looked uncomfortable. Mr. Thornton, we received a concerning call regarding your enrollment status. We need to verify some information. Can you confirm your current enrollment and that you're not currently hospitalized? I'm not hospitalized. I'm standing right here. What's going on? She hesitated. Someone contacted us claiming to be a family member with information about your status. Based on your verification today, we've noted that the information was inaccurate. We'll be flagging your account to prevent future unauthorized contacts. Mom was trying to sabotage my education. Nothing says good parenting like trying to torpedo your kid's medical school career. I documented everything, kept records of every suspicious contact, every attempted access, every weird call. Derek suggested I file a police report for the identity theft attempt. The Chicago PD took my report and assigned it a case number. Then things went nuclear. I got a call from an unknown number. Female voice, professional. Is this Elias Thornton? I'm calling from Credit Solutions regarding your outstanding debt of $8,400 from... I don't have any outstanding debts. Our records show you opened an account with AutoZone in Los Angeles 3 months ago and haven't made any payments. I've never opened an account with AutoZone. I don't even live in Los Angeles. Someone using my name and SSN had opened a credit account at AutoZone in LA and charged $8,400 worth of car parts. Never made a single payment. The account defaulted and went to collections. $8,000 in car parts. Lucas really went all in on that Challenger. I'm a victim of identity theft, I told her. My brother stole my information. I've already filed a police report. I spent the next 3 hours filing documentation. filed an identity theft report with the FTC, called the Chicago detective, and added the AutoZone fraud to my police report. With both documents, I contacted AutoZone's fraud department. 2 weeks later, they confirmed the account was fraudulent, closed it, and removed all charges from my credit report. The debt was written off, but Lucas had his car parts. I called Dad. Then I called his lawyer. "This is escalating," the lawyer said. "Your brother's committing multiple crimes. Identity theft, credit fraud, attempted fraud on the Northwestern account. Your mother's potentially an accomplice. We need to consider pressing charges." Will that actually work? The evidence is substantial. The AutoZone account alone is a serious crime with clear paper trail. Combined with the previous financial fraud, a prosecutor would love this case. Dad flew to Chicago that weekend with his lawyer, Andrew Lopez. We met in Andrew's downtown office. "Here's the situation," Andrew said, spreading documents across his conference table. "You have multiple federal criminal violations. The evidence is well documented." "What are our options?" Dad asked. "Federal prosecution is viable. What I recommend is a deferred prosecution agreement. We present all the evidence to the prosecutor. They agree the case is solid, but instead of filing charges immediately, they hold them over the defendants' heads. We set up conditions, paying back all the money, no contact orders, counseling. If they comply, the charges stay pending but unfiled. If they violate even once, the prosecutor files immediately. Is that enforceable?" I asked. "Absolutely. Prosecutors use these all the time for fraud cases. It clears their caseload, victims get made whole, and they keep the hammer hanging. Your mother and brother would have to sign and the prosecutor approves it. Any violation means charges get filed and they proceed to trial." Dad nodded. "That gives us leverage." "Exactly. Time to turn those family photos into evidence exhibits. Thanksgiving's going to be weird this year." Andrew didn't mess around. Within a week, he'd compiled everything needed to show prosecutors this was solid. The complaint listed 4 main charges: identity theft for using my information, wire fraud for the electronic transfer scheme, credit card fraud for the AutoZone account, and conspiracy. Andrew explained, "If prosecuted and convicted, Lucas is looking at potentially 2 to 5 years on the identity theft alone. Your mother would likely face lighter sentencing as an accomplice, maybe probation or up to 2 years. But we're not going for prosecution. We're going for compliance." He pulled out the draft agreement. 20 pages long, single-spaced, dense legal language. "I've already reached out to the U.S. Attorney's Office with an overview. They're interested. We present the full criminal complaint with all evidence. The prosecutor reviews and agrees prosecution would work. Then, instead of filing, they approve an agreement with specific conditions." Andrew laid out the terms. Full repayment of $78,600, covering stolen living expenses, the AutoZone fraud, unauthorized credit card advances, plus legal fees and interest. Payment plan of $3,000 per month over 26 months. Miss a payment? Charges get filed immediately. Both Lucas and Mom had to sign a court-enforced no-contact agreement for 3 years. Any contact with me, direct or indirect, would trigger immediate filing. Both had to complete court-ordered counseling within 6 months and check in monthly with a court officer. Beautiful. The best part, Andrew continued, is that it's not a plea deal. They're acknowledging the evidence supports prosecution. The charges are approved by the prosecutor and held pending for the entire compliance period. If they complete all terms, charges can be dismissed after 3 to 5 years. But any violation means the prosecutor files immediately. "So, we have leverage for at least 5 years, I said. "Correct." The prosecutor's office took 2 weeks to review everything. They approved the agreement. The assistant prosecutor told Andrew it was a solid case. Andrew sent the package to Mom's divorce attorney with a 72-hour deadline. Sign or the charges get filed. Lucas called me that night. I didn't answer, but he left a voicemail, voice shaking. "Elias, come on, man. You're going too far. You really gonna send me to prison? I'm your brother. Yeah, I messed up. But this is insane. Just call me back. Please." I saved the voicemail and sent it to Andrew. Evidence of contact attempt. Mom tried too, through Dad. Called him crying. Dad shut her down. "Lucas is not a kid. And you're 49, Diane. You knew exactly what you were doing. Sign the agreement or face charges. Those are your options." The deadline came and went. No signature. Andrew filed the criminal complaint the next morning. Within hours, Mom's lawyer called, begging for an extension. "Your clients had 72 hours, Andrew said flatly. "They chose not to sign. The complaint is filed. They'll sign. They'll sign today. I can inform the prosecutor that the victims are willing to accept the agreement instead of prosecution. The prosecutor still has to approve it." Mom and Lucas signed that afternoon. The prosecutor approved it with one modification. Counseling had to be completed within 6 months, not 1 year. Both had to check in monthly with a court-appointed officer. Lucas's trust fund, which Dad controlled, was liquidated to make the first $20,000 payment immediately. The rest would come from Mom's share of the divorce settlement and Lucas's income, which meant Lucas actually had to get a job. It was comprehensive and binding for 5 years minimum. It was perfect. Dad and I celebrated that night at a steakhouse in downtown Chicago. "You know they're going to resent you for years," Dad said. "I can live with that. How are your classes?" "Better. Way better. Made Dean's List this semester." "I'm proud of you, son." We clinked glasses. But I wasn't done yet. Not quite. Turns out there's standing up for yourself, and then there's salting the earth where they stood. Guess which one I picked? The payment agreement was great, but it was just money. What I wanted was consequences. Real, lasting, social consequences. Derek and I were having lunch between classes when I mentioned this. He got this look on his face. "What if we go public?" "Public? How?" "Social media. Your brother plastered his lifestyle all over Instagram while spending your money. Turn it around on him." I'd thought about it. It felt nuclear. That's pretty scorched earth. So is stealing 50 grand from your brother while he's collapsing from malnutrition. So is committing identity theft. Dude, they went scorched earth first. You're just returning fire. He had a point. I spent a week writing a detailed post. Kept it factual, showed screenshots of Lucas's purchases next to photos of the legal documents, blurred out sensitive info but showing enough to prove it was real. Explained exactly what had happened. I ended it with, "This isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. Actions have consequences." Posted it on my Instagram. Maybe had like 400 followers. Tagged Lucas. Andrew confirmed this type of factual post about public legal proceedings was protected speech. Within an hour, it had 200 likes and dozens of comments. Someone sent it to a Reddit community about family drama, and it blew up there too. Lucas's friends started commenting on his posts. "Bro, you stole from your brother? Wait, that car was bought with stolen money?" Lucas's Instagram went private, then disappeared entirely. Watching the internet do its thing was better than any revenge I could have planned myself. Mom's Facebook got hit too. Someone found her page and started sharing my post. Her friends from the country club started asking questions. The comments were mostly deleted, but people screenshot them. Mom called Dad, furious. "Tell Elias to take down that post. He's humiliating us." "Nah, he's telling the truth. The legal documents are public record. If you're humiliated, maybe you shouldn't have committed fraud." She tried to report my post as harassment. Instagram reviewed it and left it up because everything was factual. The social fallout was better than I could have hoped. Lucas's follower count dropped from like 1,200 to 300 before he deleted everything. Mom got dropped from her book club. One of the women actually called Dad to tell him they'd voted they didn't want someone who'd steal from her own child in their group. But the best part? Lucas had to sell his car. The payments were killing him. He'd gotten a job doing sales at a tech startup making maybe $45,000 a year. After taxes and living expenses, he couldn't afford the Challenger's insurance, maintenance, and still make his portion of the payments. He'd put $40,000 plus into that car between the original purchase and mods. Sold it for $28,000. Derek found the listing and we had a good laugh. Lucas trying to make the car look good in some mall parking lot, describing all the premium upgrades that actually made it less valuable to normal buyers. All those modifications he bought with my stolen money? Depreciation central. Meanwhile, I was thriving. With money no longer an issue, I joined a research lab at Northwestern working on trauma surgery techniques. Got myself a better apartment. Actually had a bedroom separate from the living space. Started going out with friends, having a social life. Felt like I could finally breathe. Made friends with one of my professors, Dr. Sarah, who'd noticed my grades improving. She offered me a position in her research team, studying emergency response protocols. Paid position, flexible hours, great for my resume. I accepted immediately. 6 months after the agreement was signed, I was doing better than ever. Dean's List 2 semesters in a row. Published name on a research paper, money in savings, social life, actual sleep schedule. Lucas, according to Dad's reports, was miserable. Working a job he hated. Most of his paycheck going to payments, no car, no social life. Living with roommates in a crappy LA apartment. Actually had to take public transit. The court officer confirmed they were both attending mandatory counseling. 2 years after the collapse that started everything, my life looks nothing like it did before. 3rd year of med school now, top 10% of my class, working in Dr. Sarah's research lab, published 2 papers with another one submitted, Already getting recruitment interest from hospitals for residency positions. Dad's doing great too. Divorce finalized. Mom got way less than she expected after the court factored in her fraud. She's living in a small condo, still working at a real estate office, still making payments. Has like 4 months left on her payment plan. Lucas's situation is less clear because Dad doesn't talk about him much, and I obviously can't contact him. Last I heard, he'd moved back to Phoenix after losing his LA job, was working retail. Still making payments, still in counseling, still under the agreement. He tried to reach out through Dad once, asking if we could put this behind us. I said no through Andrew. The no contact provision stands for the full 3-year term. The post I made is still up on my Instagram. Every few months someone new finds it and shares it. Got like 3,000 likes now. Among our circle, Lucas's name is permanently attached to the guy who stole from his brother. Mom's reputation in Scottsdale never recovered. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far. Then I remember working 3 jobs, eating once a day, collapsing at work. Remember the hospital bill. Remember the panic of falling behind in school. Remember calling my mom begging for help while she sent my money to Lucas for gaming equipment? Nah, they got exactly what they deserved. Derek's still my best friend. We're planning to apply to the same residency programs. He jokes that I should write a book about all this. Dr. Sarah asked me to co-present our research at a conference next month. It's in Phoenix, ironically. Dad's coming to watch. I asked if he'd heard from Mom about it. He said she'd asked if she could attend. What did you tell her? That it was your decision, not mine. I thought about it for about 3 seconds. No, she doesn't get to show up now and pretend she's proud. She lost that right when she stole from me. Dad nodded. That's what I figured. Part of me wonders if I should feel bad about cutting them off so completely. But I don't. Some people are toxic. Some people will never admit they were wrong. Me? I'm the guy who caught them stealing and made sure there were consequences. The guy who's going to be a trauma surgeon and save lives while they're still paying off what they owe. The Phoenix conference was the next month. I flew in 2 days early to prep and spend time with Dad. The presentation went perfect. Standing ovation, multiple hospital reps asking for my contact info. Dr. Sarah beaming. Afterwards, Dad wanted to take me to dinner. I was in the hotel lobby waiting for my Uber when I heard it. Elias? I turned. Lucas was standing there wearing an IKEA uniform polo. Blue and yellow. Name tag and everything. He looked different. The cocky golden child energy was just gone. What are you doing here? I work nearby. Saw you walk in earlier. Been waiting to see if you'd come back out? He took a step closer. Can we talk? Just 5 minutes? I should have walked away. The no contact order was technically still in effect for another year, but I was curious. You've got 3 minutes, and we're staying right here. Lucas nodded, looking relieved. Look, I know I messed up. I know what I did was wrong. Mom's been in therapy, and she's been telling me I need to take accountability. Lucas, cut the therapy speak nonsense. What do you actually want? He flinched. I wanted to apologize. For real. Not because the court made me. I was a selfish jerk, and I spent your money on stupid stuff while you were struggling. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Apology noted. I checked my phone. You've got 2 minutes left. That's it? I'm trying to make things right here. You want to make things right? Finish your payments. Keep seeing your therapist. Don't contact me again until the agreement expires. I looked at his uniform. How's IKEA treating you? His jaw tightened. It's a job. Yeah, it is. An honest one, too. First time for everything. Geez, Elias, you really hate me that much? I don't hate you, Lucas. I don't really feel anything about you anymore. You're just the guy who stole from me and faced consequences. I saw my Uber pulling up. But since you wanted to talk, let me ask you something. Was it worth it? Was what worth it? The gaming PC, the car mods, the Vegas trips. All of it. Was it worth losing your trust fund? Your car? Your reputation? Was it worth making minimum wage at IKEA while I'm getting recruited by Johns Hopkins? His face went red. You're really gonna throw that in my face? You asked for 5 minutes. I'm giving you honesty. My phone buzzed. Uber was waiting. Here's the thing you never got. You thought you were special. The golden child. Rules didn't apply. Mom convinced you that you deserved everything. And I was just the boring one who'd figure it out. But you weren't special. You were just enabled. I know that now. Cool. Glad therapy's working. I headed for the door. He called after me. Seriously? That's it? Yup, that's it. Have a good life, brother. Don't try to contact me again. I walked out to the Uber while he stood there in silence. He didn't try to contact me or Dad after that. Some bridges should stay burned. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. My parents made me pay $1,800 a month to stay under their roof, while my sister lived rent-free while making OnlyFans. When I bought a house in cash, they went ballistic, like my success was some personal attack on them. Alright guys, this is going to be extremely long, but I promise the ending will make your entire day. This happened about 18 months ago, and honestly, I'm still processing how absolutely nuclear everything went. Buckle up because this gets completely wild, and the revenge is beyond satisfying. Quick background on me before we dive into this insanity. I'm 26 years old, did 4 years in the Army as infantry, deployed twice to Afghanistan during some pretty intense periods. Came back home to Colorado Springs to help my family get back on their feet, while I figured out my next career move. My dad had been struggling with reduced hours at his supervisor job at the local steel mill, mom was working part-time at some overpriced boutique downtown, and my little sister Brittany was finding herself after dropping out of community college for the third freaking time. I was absolutely grinding my tail off working construction during the day. Concrete crew doing commercial pours. Probably the most back-breaking physical work you can imagine, but decent money at $28 per hour when you factor in overtime. Then I'd race across town to do overnight security shifts at this massive tech campus 3 nights per week for $18 per hour. Between both jobs, I was pulling in about $4,200 monthly before taxes, which isn't rich by any means, but pretty solid money, especially since I was living at home and constantly helping cover groceries and utilities without even being asked. Or so I thought that's how things worked. It was a Thursday night in March when my entire world got flipped completely upside down. I had just gotten home from what might have been the most brutal 12-hour concrete pour of my entire career, absolutely covered head to toe in dust and cement, shoulders aching so bad I could barely lift my arms. All I wanted in the world was a hot shower and some leftover pizza from the fridge. Instead, there's this official-looking envelope sitting on my dinner plate, like some kind of court summons or eviction notice. David Rodriguez typed in all capital letters, perfectly centered on expensive cream-colored paper. No return address, no personal handwriting, nothing that suggested this came from family. Dad was sitting across from me scrolling through his phone, deliberately avoiding any kind of eye contact. Mom was at the sink washing dishes with way too much focus and concentration, like she was trying to scrub the pattern off the plates. These should have been major warning signs that something bad was coming. I tore open the envelope with my dirty hands and nearly choked on my water when I saw what was inside. Monthly housing agreement. Effective April 1st, 2023. Monthly base rent, $1,200. Utilities and internet, $350. Food household contribution, $250. Total. Monthly payment, $1,800 payment. Due date, 1st of each month. Late fee, $100 assessed after 5th day of month. At the very bottom in bold letters, failure to comply with this agreement will result in 30-day eviction notice being served. I sat there staring at this document for what felt like 10 full minutes, trying to process what I was actually seeing. My brain couldn't compute that my own parents had created an official rental agreement to charge me for living in my childhood bedroom. What the heck is this supposed to be? I finally managed to ask. Dad finally met my eyes with this completely serious business expression. It's time you started paying your fair share around here, son. You're 26 years old with steady employment and regular income. My fair share? I held up the paper like evidence in court. $1,800 per month? For my childhood bedroom that still has Pokemon posters on the walls and a twin bed from middle school? Market rate for a private room in this area averages around $1,200 monthly, Mom said, still aggressively scrubbing the same plate she'd been working on for 5 minutes straight. Plus utilities, internet, and food contributions. We're actually giving you a significant family discount when you think about it. I looked around the dinner table with growing disbelief and anger. So where exactly is Brittany's official rental agreement? Did that somehow get lost in the mail or something? Complete and total silence filled the entire room. Brittany is going through a very important transitional period in her life right now, Dad said carefully, like he'd rehearsed this response. She's working extremely hard on building her online business venture and establishing her brand. Her online business venture. Right. What he really meant was she was making absolutely ridiculous amounts of money on OnlyFans and Instagram, posting revealing pictures and videos for lonely guys online while living completely rent-free in our parents' house. I'd personally witnessed the constant stream of designer shopping bags being delivered to our front door daily, the brand new BMW she'd bought with straight cash last month, the expensive professional ring lights and camera equipment that was permanently set up in her room, taking up half the space. Meanwhile, I'm working 60-plus hours per week doing manual labor that's literally destroying my body joint by joint. And they want to charge me more money than most people pay for actual one-bedroom apartments in nice complexes with pools and gyms. This is completely insane, I said, trying my absolute best to keep my voice level and controlled. I've been helping with groceries, utilities, household expenses, basically everything around here without even being asked to contribute. That was voluntary assistance that you chose to provide, Mom replied in this cold, businesslike tone I'd never heard her use before. This is an official rental arrangement with clear terms and expectations. But Brittany doesn't contribute anything at all. She orders expensive food delivery every single day, uses more electricity than the rest of us combined with all her equipment, and I've never seen her buy groceries or pay for anything. Brittany's situation is completely different, Dad said firmly. She's investing in her future and building something meaningful. That night, I laid in my twin bed, the exact same bed I'd slept in since 7th grade, staring at the ceiling and trying to process this complete betrayal from my own family. I'd served my country honorably for 4 years, worked my tail off every single day since coming home, never asked for handouts or special treatment, always contributed without being asked. And this is how my own parents decided to repay my loyalty, sacrifice, and dedication to helping them. I opened my laptop and created a new Excel spreadsheet file. Financial documentation. Rodriguez Family Exploitation Analysis.xlsx. If they wanted to play hardball business games with their own son and treat me like a tenant instead of family, I'd show them what real strategic planning and documentation looked like. The first month of paying that absolutely ridiculous extortion fee nearly destroyed me financially and emotionally. After taxes, that mandatory $1,800 monthly payment, and basic living expenses like gas and car insurance, I had maybe $600 left over for everything else in my life. I immediately started meal prepping nothing but rice and beans like I was back in basic training, completely stopped hanging out with my army buddies and old friends, and picked up literally every single overtime shift available at both jobs. But here's something the military teaches you really effectively. Always gather complete and accurate intelligence before making any kind of tactical moves against your enemy. So that's exactly what I started doing with obsessive precision. I began systematically documenting absolutely everything happening in that house. Every single utility bill I could secretly photograph when nobody was looking. Every grocery receipt when I bought food for the household. Every time Brittany ordered $80 worth of premium sushi delivery through DoorDash, which was happening basically every single day. Every Amazon package that arrived addressed to her. Sometimes 4 to 5 packages per day, no exaggeration. What I discovered through this careful investigation made my blood pressure absolutely skyrocket. Our house was a pretty basic 1,400 square foot ranch-style home in a decent but definitely not luxury neighborhood. I spent countless hours researching comparable rental properties online. Entire 2-bedroom apartments with swimming pools, fitness centers, and modern appliances were going for $1,400 to $1,600 monthly in the same area. And my own parents were charging me $1,800 for a single bedroom with shared bathroom access and no privacy whatsoever. But that wasn't even close to the most infuriating part of this whole situation. Since I work construction, I know skilled tradesmen in basically every possible field. My coworker from the job site does HVAC installation and repair work, and had actually worked on multiple houses in our exact neighborhood over the past few years. During our lunch break one day, I casually asked him about typical utility costs for houses similar to ours. Electric should be running you maybe $150 to $200 maximum during peak summer months. Gas probably around $100 during winter, he told me matter-of-factly. Internet's probably another $80 to $90. Why are you asking about this stuff? I was supposedly paying $350 monthly for utilities and internet, for a modest house that should realistically cost around $300 total for everything combined. Then, there was the whole food contribution scam they were running on me. I started keeping incredibly detailed records of what I actually consumed versus what Brittany was burning through on a daily basis. She was ordering expensive delivery food literally every single day. Premium Thai food, high-end sushi, those fancy organic salad places that charge $18 for basically lettuce and vegetables, specialty coffee drinks that cost more than my entire lunch budget. The groceries that I personally purchased for the household would completely disappear overnight because she'd constantly invite her equally parasitic friends over to raid our refrigerator and pantry, like they owned the place. I was paying $250 monthly for food contribution, while she was easily consuming 600 plus worth of delivery fees alone every month. Money that definitely wasn't coming from any kind of legitimate employment or her mysterious transitional period budget that my parents kept mentioning. The absolute breaking point that sent me over the edge came when I saw her Instagram story showing off a brand new $3,000 Louis Vuitton handbag, perfectly staged with professional lighting and captioned, "Treating myself, Dr. Blessed, Dr. Entrepreneur, Dr. Boss Babe, Dr. Living My Best Life." That night, I did some serious internet detective work that probably wasn't completely legal. I managed to find her OnlyFans account. Yeah, it was exactly as disturbing and gross as you'd imagine seeing your own sister like that. And used some basic mathematics to estimate her actual monthly earnings. Based on her subscriber count, the premium content prices she was charging, her posting frequency, and the tips I could see, this girl was easily pulling in somewhere between $15,000 to $20,000 per month. Let me repeat that number so it really sinks in properly. My sister was making more money in one single month than I earned in 5 months of absolutely backbreaking physical construction work that was destroying my body. And I was the family member getting charged rent to live at home. I added a new spreadsheet tab labeled Brittany's Estimated Income versus Actual Household Contributions Analysis. The financial ratio was making me physically sick to calculate and think about. Chapter 3. The Credit Card Fraud Discovery. 2 months into this rental agreement nightmare, I discovered something that pushed me from frustrated anger into absolutely livid rage territory. I was checking my credit card statement online during a work break. I only used the card for genuine emergencies and always paid the full balance immediately when I noticed multiple charges that I definitely didn't recognize. And I'm talking about a lot of unauthorized charges spread across several weeks. $340 at Sephora makeup store, $156 at Victoria's Secret, $89 at some boutique I'd never heard of in my entire life, multiple food delivery charges totaling over $400 for a single month, a $79 monthly subscription to some premium content creation platform I'd never signed up for, $67 at a nail salon, $156 for something called Ring Light Pro Studio equipment, all charged to my personal credit card, all completely unauthorized, all for stuff I would never buy in a million years. I confronted Brittany that weekend when she was in the kitchen staging one of her elaborate smoothie bowl Instagram posts, complete with professional ring lighting setup and phone camera equipment consuming half the available counter space. "Did you use my credit card for any purchases recently?" She didn't even glance up from arranging organic berries in perfect symmetrical patterns for her photo. "Yeah, like twice maybe. For emergency situations that couldn't wait." Emergency situations? I pulled out my phone and showed her the detailed statement. $340 at Sephora constituted an emergency. I needed professional-grade supplies for content creation activities. It's a legitimate business expense that I'll write off on taxes. Paid for with my money without my permission. That's called fraud. She finally looked up at me with this eye-rolling expression like I was being completely unreasonable about everything. "God, David, you're being so overdramatic about every little thing. It's not like you can't afford these small amounts. You basically live here for free anyway, so what's the big deal?" For free, while paying them $1,800 every single month like clockwork. You absolutely cannot just use someone else's credit card without explicit permission. That's literally credit card fraud, which is a serious crime. You gave me the account number that one time when I needed money for textbooks when I was still in school. That was over a year ago, for legitimate educational expenses that we discussed beforehand. She went back to her elaborate photography setup like our conversation was completely over. "Whatever, David. I'll pay you back when I get around to it and have some free time." When I tried discussing this theft situation with my parents later that evening, Dad's response was, "You two need to work out these sibling disputes between yourselves like adults. We're not getting involved in petty arguments over money. Sibling disputes. Like credit card fraud was just some minor disagreement over television remote control privileges or who got to choose dinner. I spent that entire night going through 6 months of detailed credit card statements with a fine-tooth comb. The total amount of unauthorized charges came to over $2,800. Almost $3,000 of fraudulent purchases for makeup, expensive clothing, food delivery, subscription services, and various equipment for her business operations. But the real punch to the gut that made me see red was discovering a $500 charge to some high-end photography studio downtown. When I reverse searched the business address online, it turned out to be a place that specialized in boudoir and artistic photography services, with a portfolio full of suggestive photos. She had used my credit card to pay for professional photo shoots for her OnlyFans content. I was literally funding my own sister's adult content career while she lived completely rent-free, and I got financially bled dry every single month. That night, I opened a new browser window and started researching how to dispute fraudulent credit card charges, but then stopped myself mid-search. Filing official fraud disputes would create immediate problems and complications, potentially even legal ones that could blow up in my face. And I was starting to realize that creating immediate, obvious problems might not be the most effective long-term strategy for dealing with this situation. Instead, I opened new tabs and searched asset protection strategies, LLC formation requirements Colorado, and property investment for beginners. If my family absolutely insisted on treating me like a business transaction rather than their son, maybe it was time I started thinking and operating like a serious businessman who knew how to protect himself. I opened the business banking account on a Tuesday, during my lunch break from the construction site, drove 30 minutes across town to a credit union in a completely different area, tucked neatly between a pawn shop and a used car dealership. Perfect location for maintaining complete privacy and staying under anyone's radar who might know my family. The account representative was this older gentleman who looked like he'd seen every possible financial situation in his career and learned not to judge anything. When he asked about the business purpose and planned activities, I kept the explanation simple and straightforward. Property investments, financial consulting services, and asset management. I funded the initial account with my quarterly safety bonus from the construction company, $1,200 that I'd earned for maintaining 0 workplace incidents during the previous 3-month period. It wasn't a massive amount by any means, but it represented a solid foundation that I could build upon strategically. Any particular reason for choosing a separate financial institution instead of your current bank? The representative asked in a professional tone. Just maintaining clean separation between business and personal finances, I explained calmly. You know how important proper accounting practices are for tax purposes and legal protection. I established the entire operation under Rodco Holdings LLC, named after my family's surname, but generic enough to avoid drawing any attention from anyone who might be casually researching business records. All business correspondence was directed to a P.O. box that I'd rented under the company name at a postal facility across town. That evening, I completely upgraded and expanded my spreadsheet documentation system. What had started as basic record keeping was rapidly evolving into a comprehensive financial intelligence gathering operation that would make my old Army intelligence buddies proud. I created detailed tabs for monthly rent payments and fee tracking analysis, household expenses breakdown, actual costs versus amounts charged to me, Brittany's unauthorized spending documentation with dates and amounts, parents' real income and expense patterns based on observation, local property research and market analysis data, legal precedent research for financial exploitation cases, asset protection strategies, and business formation options. The deeper I investigated into my family's actual financial situation, the more disturbing the overall picture became. Through extremely careful observation and discreet document photography, when nobody was home, I discovered that Dad had been completely lying about his employment situation. He wasn't actually laid off or struggling with reduced hours like he'd been claiming for months. He was still working full-time at the steel mill, just on a different shift schedule, and making approximately $3,800 monthly before taxes. Mom's supposedly part-time boutique position was actually pulling in a solid $2,200 per month. Their combined household income was definitely in solid middle-class territory. So why were they constantly claiming to be financially struggling and unable to pay basic bills? The answer became crystal clear when I started tracking their actual spending patterns and habits over several weeks. Dad was dropping $300+ monthly at the Indian casino, about an hour outside town, taking weekend trips he claimed were job interviews or networking events, but were obviously gambling binges. Mom was spending absolutely ridiculous amounts on MLM pyramid scheme products, essential oils, supplements, skincare systems, weight loss shakes, that she'd then attempt to resell to her friends and coworkers at a loss. And both parents were constantly purchasing expensive gifts, clothes, and experiences for Brittany without any expectation of repayment. They weren't charging me rent because they genuinely needed assistance with legitimate household bills. They were charging me rent because they were completely financially irresponsible and viewed me as an easy, reliable source of income to subsidize their poor decisions and fund their daughter's lifestyle. Meanwhile, I started networking with experienced guys from the construction crews about real estate investment opportunities and strategies. Construction work provides access to incredibly valuable inside information, which neighborhoods are getting major development projects, which properties have hidden structural problems that aren't obvious to regular buyers, where smart investors are moving their money and why. My foreman had been successfully flipping houses for over a decade as a profitable side business. During our lunch breaks, he started teaching me about property investment fundamentals, market analysis techniques, renovation cost estimation, and most importantly, how to structure real estate deals for maximum privacy protection and tax advantages. The key to everything in this business, he explained while we ate sandwiches in his truck, is having better information than the other party in any transaction. When you know more than they do about the real situation, you control the entire outcome. I took that advice very seriously and started applying those same principles to my family situation. 4 months into this rental agreement nightmare, my foreman approached me with something that could potentially be completely game-changing for my future. Hey, remember that house where we did the emergency foundation repair work last month? The one over on Maple Street with the cracked basement? I definitely remembered. Really nice neighborhood with solid construction quality throughout, but the property owners were going through an extremely ugly divorce, and both parties wanted to sell immediately and move on with their lives. It's going to public auction next week. Divorce proceedings got really messy with lawyers involved. Neither spouse wants to keep the property, and the bank is highly motivated to move it quickly to avoid foreclosure costs. He showed me the official auction listing on his phone. 3-bedroom ranch-style house, 1,800 square feet of living space, 2-car attached garage, decent-sized yard with mature landscaping, and established trees. Under normal market circumstances, it would easily be worth $280,000 or more. The auction estimate range was listed at $180,000 to $200,000. Cash buyers get significant preference and priority positioning. You interested in potentially partnering up on this deal? I'd been systematically saving every possible dollar for months, plus I had access to VA loan benefits from my military service. But I was still nowhere near having that kind of capital available for investment. Then my foreman explained the real opportunity hidden in this situation. Property needs approximately $30,000 in renovation and improvement work, mostly cosmetic improvements and updates that we could easily handle ourselves with our skills and contractor connections. But here's the really interesting part. Location and size mean you could easily rent it for $2,200 to $2,400 monthly, and that's being conservative with the market estimates. He pulled up comparable rental properties in the same area on his phone browser. His numbers weren't exaggerated at all. Similar houses were renting for exactly those amounts. I provide the real estate expertise, contractor network connections, and project management experience. You provide the capital investment and handle ongoing property management responsibilities. We split all profits 60-40 in your favor, since you're putting up the actual money and taking the financial risk. That night, I analyzed the financial projections about 50 different ways using various scenarios and market conditions. With my construction experience and his renovation expertise, we could probably complete the entire rehab project for closer to $20,000 instead of the estimated $30,000. At $2,300 monthly rental income, the property would generate positive cash flow from the very first month, plus long-term appreciation potential. More importantly than just the money, it would provide me with something I desperately needed: real leverage and complete independence from my family's financial manipulation. I contacted the credit union the very next morning and scheduled a meeting about investment property financing options. As it turned out, my military service record combined with steady employment history and the money I'd been systematically saving qualified me for much better financing terms than I'd originally expected. By Thursday afternoon, Rodco Holdings LLC had official pre-approval for $200,000 in property investment financing at competitive interest rates. Friday morning, my foreman and I stood on the courthouse steps waiting for the public auction to begin. Bidding started at $160,000. There were maybe 8 other potential bidders present, but most dropped out relatively quickly when it became obvious this wasn't going to be a bargain basement steal. My foreman and I had agreed beforehand on a maximum bid of $190,000 that we absolutely wouldn't exceed. When the auctioneer's hammer finally came down at $185,000, we officially owned our first investment property. Walking away from that courthouse, I felt something I hadn't experienced in many months. Not just hope or optimism, actual power and control over my own destiny. For the first time since this entire family exploitation situation started, I wasn't just reacting defensively to what other people were doing to me. I was making strategic offensive moves that would change everything. The following 6 weeks represented some of the hardest physical work I'd ever done in my entire life, but also the most personally satisfying and meaningful labor I'd ever completed. My foreman and I spent literally every weekend and most weekday evenings transforming that auction property into something genuinely special and move-in ready. We installed new luxury vinyl flooring throughout the entire house, applied fresh paint in modern neutral colors that would appeal to professional tenants, updated all the light fixtures to energy-efficient LED systems, and completely renovated the kitchen with granite countertops and matching stainless steel appliances. I personally did most of the actual physical labor myself, which kept material costs down significantly while giving me something productive and forward-looking to focus on besides the ongoing disaster at home. My parents barely noticed my absence during most weekends and evenings. They were too busy enabling Brittany's latest entrepreneurial schemes and lifestyle choices. She'd started some kind of confidence coaching business on top of her OnlyFans operation, charging desperate women $500 for personal empowerment consultations. That basically consisted of telling them to show more skin in their social media posts and embrace their feminine power. The girl was pulling in close to $25,000 monthly now between all her various online ventures and business activities, and she was still living completely rent-free, while I paid $1,800 every month for the privilege of sleeping in a twin bed and having my credit card stolen for her business expenses. But I was systematically documenting absolutely everything with obsessive precision. Every luxury purchase she posted on Instagram and TikTok with location tags and price information. Every time she borrowed mom and dad's vehicles instead of using her own BMW because it was in the shop, or she didn't want to put miles on it. Every family dinner where she ordered expensive takeout for everyone and then conveniently forgot her wallet when the bill arrived, leaving my parents to pay. The renovation project was nearing completion when I discovered something that fundamentally changed my entire understanding of what my parents were planning. I was replacing a broken sprinkler head in our front yard on a Saturday morning when our next-door neighbor came over to make casual conversation. She's this sweet elderly lady who's lived in the neighborhood for 30 years and notices absolutely everything that happens on our street. "Are your parents getting ready to sell the house?" she asked in a friendly, curious tone. "What? No, definitely not. Why would you think that?" "Oh, I saw a real estate agent taking photographs and measurements last week. Professional-looking woman with a clipboard and measuring tape. Thought maybe they were preparing to list the property for sale." My stomach completely dropped to the ground. What real estate agent? When exactly was this? She described a professional woman who'd spent about an hour photographing the house from multiple angles, measuring various rooms, taking detailed notes on official-looking paperwork. Complete professional setup with business cards and official materials. That night, I conducted absolutely thorough online research into local real estate activity. I found the agent's name through the MLS database system that my foreman had taught me how to navigate. Called her office the very next day, pretending to be a potential buyer interested in neighborhood properties. "Oh yes, the Rodriguez property on Pine Street," she confirmed immediately. "We're not quite ready to list officially yet, but the owners are definitely considering a spring timeline for selling. Were you specifically interested in that particular area?" My parents were secretly planning to sell our family house. The exact same house they were charging me $1,800 monthly to live in. Without telling me anything about their plans or timeline, I hung up the phone and immediately called my foreman. "How quickly can we get our rental property completely ready for tenants?" 2 weeks maximum, maybe 10 days if we really push hard and work some long hours." Why the sudden urgency? Because I think I'm about to become homeless, and I need to accelerate our entire timeline before that happens. That weekend, my foreman and I worked literally around-the-clock shifts to finish every remaining detail. By the following Friday evening, the house was absolutely rental-ready and looked amazing. We listed it online Saturday morning with professional photographs that made it look like a magazine spread. By Sunday night, we had 12 qualified applications and a rapidly growing waiting list of interested potential tenants. The couple we selected was absolutely perfect for our needs. Young professionals in their late 20s, both with stable employment and excellent credit scores. No red flags in their backgrounds or rental history. They wanted to move in immediately and actually offered $2,400 monthly, which was $100 more than our asking price. My foreman grinned when we signed the lease agreement. "Congratulations, partner. You're officially a successful landlord with positive cash flow." But I wasn't thinking about the rental income or the business success at that moment. I was thinking about the final phase of what I was planning to do next and how satisfying it was going to be. Chapter 7. Nuclear Option and Complete Victory. I moved out on a Wednesday morning while everyone was predictably away from the house following their usual routines. Brittany had her weekly content creation session at some photography studio downtown. Mom was at her book club meeting, and Dad was at the casino pretending to attend a job interview or networking event. I'd been quietly relocating my important possessions to a storage unit for several weeks, so there wasn't much remaining in my room. Essential clothes, my laptop computer, some personal items with sentimental value from my military service. Everything that truly mattered to me fit easily in my pickup truck with room to spare. On the kitchen table, I left my house key in a single piece of paper with a brief professional message. Effective immediately, I am terminating my rental agreement with this property. Final rent payment was processed March 1st as agreed. All utilities and services registered in my name will be disconnected within 48 hours. Future communication should be directed through Rodco Holdings, LLC at P.O. Box 2847, Colorado Springs, Colorado. David Rodriguez. No emotional appeals, no detailed explanations, no room for argument or negotiation. Just cold business facts, delivered with the same impersonal precision they'd used in that original invoice. But here's where the story gets really satisfying for everyone who's read this far. What my family didn't realize was that I'd been conducting much more extensive research than just property values and rental markets over the past several months. I'd been thoroughly investigating their financial situations, business dealings, and most importantly, Brittany's online business operations and legal compliance. It turns out my entrepreneurial sister had been making some seriously major mistakes that were about to catch up with her. First major discovery. She'd never reported any of her substantial OnlyFans income to the IRS. We're talking about $200,000 plus in completely unreported income over the past year and a half. That's federal tax evasion territory, with serious legal consequences, including potential prison time. Second discovery. She'd been using our parents' home address for all her business correspondence, tax documents, and legal paperwork, which meant when the IRS eventually came investigating, and they definitely would, they'd find mom and dad listed as potential accessories to tax fraud. Third discovery, and this was the most beautiful part. She'd been advertising and filming her OnlyFans content using photos and videos taken throughout our parents' house. Master bedroom, living room, kitchen, backyard, basically every room, which meant they were technically operating a commercial adult entertainment business out of a residential property, in direct violation of approximately 6 different city ordinances and HOA regulations. But I didn't just anonymously report these violations to the appropriate authorities immediately. That approach would have been too simple and straightforward. Instead, I waited patiently for the perfect timing to maximize impact. About 2 weeks after I'd moved out and established my independence, I received the phone call I'd been anticipating. Dad's voice was tight with barely controlled panic and stress. "David, we really need to talk immediately. Can you come over to the house right now? I don't live there anymore, remember? You can schedule an appointment through my business email address if needed." "You're what?" "David, this is extremely serious. We received some very official letters today that we don't understand." I knew exactly which letters he was referring to. The IRS audit notification for Brittany requiring immediate response. The city code enforcement violation notices with substantial fines. The HOA fine documentation totaling thousands of dollars. The real estate agent contract cancellation letter due to legal complications. You see, once I'd moved out and established my complete independence, I'd made several strategic phone calls over the course of a week. Anonymous tips about unreported income to the IRS fraud hotline, with specific details and evidence. Detailed complaints about commercial activity in residential areas, to code enforcement with photographic proof. Comprehensive evidence of HOA violations to the Homeowners Association Board with documentation. I can meet you at the coffee shop downtown Saturday afternoon, 2 o'clock sharp. When they arrived for our meeting, they looked like they'd aged 10 years in just 2 weeks. Dad's hair seemed grayer and thinner. Mom had visible stress lines around her eyes, and Brittany looked like she'd been crying for days straight. I sat across from them wearing my best business casual outfit and maintaining a completely neutral, professional expression with a thick folder of official documents beside my coffee cup. "So," I said calmly, "what seems to be the problem?" Dad slid a thick stack of official government letters across the table with shaking hands. IRS audit notification requiring immediate response. City code violation notices with escalating fines. HOA violation documentation totaling $15,000 in penalties. A notice that their homeowner's insurance had been canceled due to undisclosed commercial activity on the premises. "We don't understand what's happening to us," Mom said desperately. "Everything hit us at once like some kind of coordinated attack." I flipped through the papers methodically like I was seeing them for the first time. Wow, this is pretty serious stuff. Federal tax issues, city violations, insurance problems. "Can you help us figure this out?" Dad asked with desperation in his voice. "I know things got complicated when you moved out. But we're still family. Help you in what specific way? Maybe, maybe you could move back home? Mom suggested hopefully. Help us navigate this situation? We could definitely adjust the rent arrangement to something more reasonable. I pretended to consider their proposal very carefully. What kind of adjustment were you thinking? We could lower it to $1,500 monthly, Dad said quickly, like he was offering me a great deal. Maybe even $1,200? Mom added, when I didn't respond immediately with enthusiasm. I let the silence stretch uncomfortably until Brittany finally exploded emotionally. This is completely ridiculous! David, just help us. You know I can pay whatever stupid fees these are. Actually, I said calmly, opening my documentation folder, that's a significant part of the problem we're dealing with here. I spread out copies of everything I'd been systematically documenting for months. Bank statements showing her unreported income patterns, screenshots of her social media posts, advertising content filmed inside their house, printed copies of city ordinances she'd violated, tax code explanations highlighting her legal obligations and penalties. Brittany, based on my research and calculations, you owe approximately $78,000 in federal taxes, plus substantial penalties and interest charges. The city fines will total around $25,000 if you don't immediately cease all commercial operations. And since all of this illegal activity was happening at Mom and Dad's registered address, I turned to face my parents directly. You're considered legal accessories under federal law. The color completely drained from Dad's face. What does that mean exactly? It means the IRS can pursue your assets too. House, vehicles, bank accounts, retirement savings, everything you own can be seized to pay these debts. Brittany was staring at the documents like they were written in a completely foreign language. But I didn't know I had to pay taxes on that income. Nobody told me. Ignorance of tax law isn't considered a legal defense, I explained matter-of-factly. But there might be a potential solution to this situation. Hope flickered desperately in Dad's eyes. What kind of solution? Well, you need immediate cash flow to start paying these substantial debts before they get worse. You need someone with business experience to help navigate these complex legal issues. And you need to completely restructure your entire financial situation to ensure compliance. I pulled out another set of official documents from my folder. Rodco Holdings LLC is prepared to offer a comprehensive debt management and property improvement package that could solve all of these problems. The proposal was absolutely beautiful in its elegant simplicity. Rodco would purchase their house for $220,000, which was about $30,000 under current market value, but enough to cover their existing mortgage and some of the tax debt. They could then rent the property back from me for $2,200 monthly, while they sorted out their legal and financial situations. Brittany would be required to immediately shut down all content creation activities and find legitimate employment to start paying her substantial tax obligations. All her future income would be monitored and managed through Rodco to ensure full legal compliance. Mom and Dad would keep their current jobs, but all their finances would be managed through a strict budget system that I would personally oversee to prevent future problems. This is completely insane, Brittany said, her voice rising. You want us to pay you rent to live in our own house? It's not your house anymore, I replied calmly. You're about to lose it anyway when the IRS places a lien on the property for unpaid taxes. This arrangement allows you to stay here. How much monthly rent are we talking about? Dad asked quietly. $2,200. Current market rate for a property this size, plus utilities, which you'll pay directly. That's more than you were paying us. No, I corrected firmly. That's what you should have been charging someone who was actually capable of paying it consistently without stealing from family members. I stood up and gathered my paperwork methodically. You have exactly 48 hours to make your decision. After that deadline, you're on your own with the IRS and the legal system. They called me exactly 6 hours later and accepted the entire offer without negotiation. When I was 14, my parents told me to grow up and stop being a burden, then left me at a truck stop in the desert. I never spoke to them again until my sister's wedding invite arrived 17 years later. Hey, Reddit. So this is going to be rough, but I need to get it out there. My parents abandoned me at a truck stop in the middle of nowhere when I was 14 years old. Told me I was a burden and drove off. I slept in a drainage ditch that night. Fast forward 17 years, and I just got a wedding invitation from my sister with a note from my parents like nothing ever happened. Here's what went down. I'm Owen, 31 years old now. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I opened it. Cream-colored expensive paper, my sister Madison's name printed in elegant script across the return address. I knew what it was before I touched it. 17 years since I last saw my parents, Robert and Linda Mitchell. 17 years since they drove away from that truck stop outside Henderson, Nevada, leaving me standing next to a grimy bathroom with nothing but a backpack and 23 bucks in my pocket. But let me back up and give you the full picture of how messed up my family was from the beginning. Growing up in Fresno, we looked like the perfect family from the outside. Big house in a gated community, 2 successful parents, 2 kids. My dad Robert ran a boutique architecture firm, specializing in medical buildings and corporate offices. My mom Linda was a partner at one of the biggest law firms in the Central Valley, specializing in corporate litigation. They made good money, drove nice cars, belonged to the country club. On paper, we had everything. Behind closed doors? Different story entirely. I was always the problem child. Madison was 2 years older, straight A's from kindergarten on, captain of the volleyball team, student body president, debate team champion. Basically the daughter who never caused issues. She was organized, focused, naturally gifted at everything academic. Teachers loved her. My parents' friends would always comment on how impressive she was, how she was going places. Then there was me. I struggled with school from day one. Not because I was stupid. My test scores showed I was actually pretty smart, but because I had undiagnosed ADHD that nobody bothered to investigate. I couldn't sit still during lessons. I'd start homework assignments and forget what I was doing halfway through. I'd lose papers between my backpack and my desk. Simple stuff that came easy to everyone else felt like climbing a mountain for me. My dad said I was lazy. My mom said I just needed to apply myself. When I was in 3rd grade and brought home my first D, my mom sat me down and gave me this speech about how disappointed she was. "Madison never brings home grades like this," she said. "What's wrong with you?" I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just knew that no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't keep up. By middle school, the comparison to Madison was constant. She'd come home with straight A's and awards, and my parents would celebrate with her favorite dinner and praise. I'd come home with B's and C's, which honestly took me twice as much effort as Madison's A's took her, and I'd get lectures about not living up to my potential. "Your sister manages to excel at everything," my dad would say during these talks. "She's taking advanced classes, she's in 3 extracurricular activities, and she still gets perfect grades. You're taking regular classes and can barely pass. It's embarrassing." That word, embarrassing, came up a lot. I was an embarrassment to them, a stain on their perfect family portrait. When I asked for help with homework, my father would sigh like I'd asked him to move a mountain. He'd glance at my assignment, say something like, "This is basic stuff, Owen. Figure it out yourself," and go back to his architectural plans. You can't expect everyone to hold your hand through life. Madison figured it out on her own. So can you. My mom was worse in some ways. She'd start to help, then get frustrated when I didn't understand her explanations. "I've explained this 3 times now. Are you even listening? Madison got this concept immediately when she was your age. I don't understand why you're being so difficult." I tried, man. I really did. But the harder I tried, the worse things got. By 14, I was pulling C's and D's despite spending hours on homework every night. I'd forget to turn in assignments even when I'd completed them. I'd lose track of time and show up late to class. My parents' disappointment hung over our house like smoke, thick and choking. The worst part was how they talked about me to other people, like I wasn't even there. At family gatherings, they'd brag about Madison to anyone who'd listen. "She just got accepted to this prestigious summer program at Stanford. We're so proud." Then someone would ask about me, and my parents would get this tight-lipped look. "Owen's finding his way. He's been struggling a bit with school, but we're working on it." Translation: Our son is a disappointment we don't know what to do with. Madison wasn't mean about it, at least not directly, but she was so used to being the golden child that she didn't even notice how differently we were treated. She'd complain about getting an A- like it was the end of the world, and my parents would comfort her and help her strategize how to do better. I'd celebrate getting a B on a test I'd studied for all week, and they'd ask why it wasn't an A. Different standards, different worlds, same family. The summer before 9th grade, things escalated to a breaking point. My mom landed this huge promotion at her law firm. Made partner, big deal, fancy celebration dinner at the most expensive restaurant in town. My dad's architecture firm won some prestigious contract to design a massive medical complex downtown, a multi-million-dollar project that would take 3 years. Madison got accepted into this competitive summer program at Stanford for high school students. Only 30 kids from across the country got in. The whole family was winning. Everyone was succeeding, moving up, achieving their dreams. And me? I failed algebra, had to retake it in summer school while everyone else was celebrating their victories. The report card came in mid-June. I knew it was bad before I opened it, but seeing that F in black and white made my stomach drop. I'd worked so hard in that class, stayed after school for help, spent hours trying to understand polynomials and quadratic equations. None of it stuck. My brain just couldn't process the abstract concepts the way it needed to. I waited until dinner to tell them. Figured maybe if they were all together, the blow would be softened. I was wrong. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? My mother asked, her voice sharp as glass. She'd just gotten home from work, still in her expensive suit, her partner nameplate probably still warm from being mounted on her new office door. Madison's professors at Stanford are asking about our family. They want to know about her background, her home life. What am I supposed to say? That our youngest can't even pass high school math? He's not even trying, my dad added, not looking at me. He was cutting his steak with more force than necessary. He's given up. I see it every day. He comes home from school and just gives up. I haven't given up, I said quietly. I studied every night. I went to tutoring. I don't understand why it's not working. Because you're not applying yourself, my mom snapped. Madison takes twice as many classes as you, participates in extracurricular activities, volunteers, and still maintains a 4.0. You have half her course load and you can't even pass basic math. It's a choice, Owen. You're choosing to fail. That hurt worse than anything. The idea that I was deliberately failing, that I wanted this, that I enjoyed disappointing them. I wanted to scream that I was trying harder than Madison ever had to, that what came naturally to her required every ounce of effort I had. But I knew they wouldn't believe me. My dad set down his fork. Your mother and I have been talking. This pattern can't continue. You're going to be in high school in the fall. High school grades matter for college. We're not going to let you throw away your future because you can't be bothered to do the work. I am doing the work. Clearly not enough, he interrupted. Madison's already getting recruitment letters from universities. You know what you're getting? Letters about summer school schedules. It's pathetic. Madison sat there silently through all of this, pushing food around her plate. She looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything in my defense. Never did. She'd learned early that staying out of it was the safest play. The rest of that summer was a nightmare. While Madison prepared for Stanford, buying new clothes and special notebooks and getting excited about meeting brilliant students from around the country, I sat in a hot classroom 5 days a week with other kids who'd failed their classes. The teacher was kind but overworked, teaching 3 different subjects to kids who didn't want to be there. I passed with a C-. It took every ounce of effort I had, but I passed. My parents didn't congratulate me. They didn't even acknowledge it. The same week I finished summer school, Madison came home from Stanford with stories of autonomous robots she'd built, professors who'd praised her work, students from MIT and Caltech who'd exchanged contact info with her for future projects. At dinner that night, my dad asked her detailed questions about her program, the curriculum, the other students, the facilities. My mom talked about how this would look amazing on college applications. They were already planning her future, which Ivy League schools she'd apply to, what summer internships she should pursue next year. Nobody asked about summer school. Nobody mentioned the C- I'd fought so hard for. That's when I really understood. I wasn't part of the family vision. I was an obstacle to it. August 19th. That's the date I'll never forget. We were driving back from visiting my grandmother in Los Angeles. She lived in a retirement community in Pasadena, and we made the trip twice a year. This time, it had been particularly awkward because my grandmother kept asking me about school, and my parents kept deflecting with vague answers about how I was working on improving. Madison sat in the front seat for most of the drive back, talking about her summer program at Stanford. Some robotics thing where she'd built an autonomous vehicle that won their competition. She'd gotten a certificate signed by the program director and a letter of recommendation for college applications. My parents were already planning how to leverage this achievement. I was in the back, staring out the window, exhausted from 2 hours of listening to how accomplished my sister was. The landscape shifted from LA's sprawl to the Mojave Desert. Empty, brown, endless. Heat shimmered off the pavement even though the sun was starting to drop toward the horizon. Somewhere past Barstow, heading toward Vegas on I-15, my dad suddenly said he needed to stop. Need coffee and to stretch my legs, he announced. We'll stop at that truck stop coming up. It was one of those massive places right off the interstate. Gas pumps in multiple rows. A Denny's attached to the main building. A convenience store. Trucker showers. Even a small chapel for long-haul drivers. Semis lined up in the back lot like sleeping elephants. Desert stretched out in every direction, brown and hostile under the late afternoon sun. My dad pulled up to a pump, but didn't start filling the tank. Just turned off the engine and sat there for a moment. My mom was unusually quiet, staring straight ahead. Madison was texting someone, probably her boyfriend, not paying attention to the weird tension in the car. Everyone out, my dad said. We're taking a break. My mom went straight to the bathroom. Madison stayed near the car, leaning against the passenger door with her phone. I wandered toward the main building, thinking maybe I'd grab a snack or use the bathroom myself. That's when my dad called me back. Owen, come here. His voice had that flat quality it got when he was about to say something he'd already decided. I walked back to the car, confused. He was standing by the open trunk. My backpack, the one I'd brought on the trip with just my clothes, a book, some snacks, was sitting on the edge of the trunk bed. Your mother and I have been talking, he started. His face was completely blank, like he was discussing a business transaction. You're 14 years old now. You're old enough to understand consequences. Old enough to start taking responsibility for yourself. My stomach twisted into a knot. What do you mean? We're tired, Owen. He said my name like it tasted bad in his mouth. We're tired of the drama, the poor grades, the constant neediness. We've tried everything. Tutors, study groups, accommodations at school, incentives, punishments. Nothing works because you don't want it to work. That's not true. Don't interrupt me. His voice was cold, the way he probably talked to contractors who'd messed up his projects. You need to grow up and stop being such a burden on this family. We have Madison's future to focus on. She has real potential, real opportunities, and we can't keep wasting our time and energy on someone who refuses to help themselves. My mother appeared behind him then. I'd been so focused on my dad that I hadn't noticed her coming back from the bathroom. Her face was hard, makeup perfect, hair still styled even after hours in the car. She looked at me the way you'd look at a stain on expensive furniture, with mild disgust and annoyance. We've given you every opportunity, she said. Private tutors that cost us hundreds of dollars. A private educational consultant who designed a study plan specifically for you. Accommodations at school that Madison never needed. But you refuse to meet us halfway. You refuse to put in even basic effort. I don't understand what you're saying. My voice cracked. My hands were shaking. Some part of me knew what was coming, but my brain refused to accept it. You're old enough to figure things out on your own, my dad said. He picked up my backpack and held it out to me like he was handing back a borrowed tool. There's some money in the front pocket. I suggest you use it wisely. Make better choices than you've been making. I didn't take the backpack. Just stood there, frozen, staring at him. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of scare tactic, a lesson they were teaching me. Parents didn't just abandon their kids at truck stops in the middle of nowhere. Dad, what are you doing? This is your wake-up call, my mom interrupted. Her voice clipped and businesslike. Maybe when you realize how good you had it, you'll appreciate what you've thrown away. Maybe you'll finally grow up and take responsibility for your own failures instead of expecting us to fix everything for you. I'm not throwing anything away, I said, my voice rising. I'm trying so hard. No, you're not, my dad said firmly. He set the backpack on the ground between us. If you were trying, you'd be succeeding. Madison tries, and look at her accomplishments. You make excuses and expect us to keep carrying you. We're done carrying you. They turned and walked back toward the car. Just like that. No hesitation, no second thoughts. My mom got in the passenger seat and immediately pulled down the visor mirror, checking her makeup like this was completely normal. Like she hadn't just told her 14-year-old son she was abandoning him in the desert. I stood there, frozen, certain this was some cruel joke. Any second now they'd turn around. They'd laugh. That harsh, mocking laugh my dad used when he thought someone was being ridiculous. And tell me to get back in the car. They'd say they were teaching me a lesson about taking things for granted. The engine started. Madison's face appeared in the rear window. She looked back at me, and for a second our eyes met. Her face was pale, eyes wide. She looked scared. She mouthed something I couldn't make out. Maybe I'm sorry, maybe I don't know. But she didn't move, didn't open the door, didn't scream at our parents to stop. She just turned around slowly and faced forward. The car backed out of the parking space. My dad turned the wheel, put it in drive, and headed for the exit. I stood there watching them drive away, my backpack still on the ground at my feet, the late afternoon sun beating down on my head. A semi-truck pulled into the pump next to where we'd been parked, the air brakes hissing, and I flinched like I'd been slapped. They were really gone. I stood in that parking lot for 20 minutes, maybe longer. The sun was setting, painting the desert sky in violent shades of orange and purple. Other cars came and went. People looked at me, a teenage kid standing alone with a backpack, no parents in sight, but nobody said anything. Maybe they thought I was waiting for someone. Maybe they just didn't want to get involved. I was 80 miles from home in the middle of nowhere. The truck stop sat like an island in an ocean of empty desert. I had no phone. My parents had taken it 2 weeks earlier as punishment for failing a quiz. No way to call anyone. No plan for what came next. Finally, my legs started working again. I picked up the backpack and walked toward the main building, my mind blank, moving on autopilot. I walked to the main building and found a payphone near the bathrooms. The ancient kind with metal cords and that sticky residue on the handset. First quarter I fed, it didn't connect. The second quarter got me a dial tone. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely push the buttons. I called our house, let it ring, and ring, and ring. Nobody answered. Tried again. Nothing. I stood there for a minute, the dial tone humming in my ear, trying to figure out what to do next. I didn't have any other numbers memorized. All my contacts had been in my phone. My grandmother didn't have a cell, just a landline at the retirement community, and I didn't know that number by heart. Tried our house 3 more times over the next hour. Each time, same result. Just ringing into the void. They were home by now, they had to be, but they weren't answering. Maybe they'd unplugged the phone. Maybe they were sitting there listening to it ring, waiting to see how long I'd keep trying. By 10 p.m., the truck stop had mostly emptied out. A few semis were parked in the back lot with their running lights on, drivers probably sleeping in their cabs. The Denny's was closing up. The guy working the register at the convenience store kept giving me suspicious looks through the window. A security guard, older guy, maybe 60, with a gut that hung over his belt, walked up to me while I was sitting on a bench outside the main entrance. "You waiting for someone, kid?" "Yeah," I lied. "My parents. They went to grab something and told me to wait here." He looked around the mostly empty parking lot. "When did they leave?" "A while ago. They'll be back soon." He didn't look convinced. "Well, I can't let you stay inside overnight once we lock up. Property rules. If they're not back in the next hour, you'll need to find somewhere else to wait." "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He walked away, and I realized I was about to have nowhere to go. I walked around the perimeter of the truck stop, looking for anywhere I could sleep that wouldn't be immediately visible. Found a drainage ditch behind the truck parking area. A concrete channel maybe 4 feet wide and 3 feet deep, where runoff from the parking lot would flow during rain. It was dry now, just oil-stained concrete and desert dust. I climbed down into it and sat with my back against the sloped wall. It was cooler down here, at least. The concrete held the night chill, and the walls blocked some of the wind that had picked up as the temperature dropped. I curled up in the ditch with my backpack as a pillow. The ground was hard and smelled like diesel and something chemical I couldn't identify. I could hear the highway traffic from Interstate 15, a constant low roar that never quite stopped. Sometimes a semi would pull into the lot, air brakes hissing, engine rumbling, and I'd tense up, worried someone would see me. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. I was terrified someone would find me and call the police. Terrified no one would find me, and I'd just be stuck here forever. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes burned, then lay there staring at the stars, trying to understand what I'd done that was so terrible I deserved this. The desert night was cold in a way I wasn't prepared for. My sweatshirt wasn't warm enough. I curled into a tight ball, arms wrapped around myself, shivering. Every noise made me jump. Scurrying animals, wind rattling loose trash, the occasional car door slamming. At some point, exhaustion must have won because I drifted into a half-sleep. Not quite unconscious, but not fully aware either. Had dreams about being in the car, Madison turning around to look at me, but her face kept changing. Sometimes scared, sometimes blank, sometimes accusatory like this was my fault. When the sun came up, light creeping into the ditch and warming the concrete, I felt like I'd been run over. Everything hurt. My back from the hard ground, my head from crying and dehydration, my chest from the weight of what had happened. I climbed out of the ditch and went to the bathroom in the main building, washed my face with hand soap that smelled like industrial chemicals. In the mirror, I looked like hell. Red eyes, dirt on my face, hair sticking up in all directions. A woman coming out of the ladies' room gave me a concerned look, but didn't say anything. I counted the money in my backpack. $23 in cash. That was it. My entire net worth. Bought a granola bar and a bottle of water from the vending machines, leaving me with $19. Sat on the curb near the gas pumps, eating slowly, trying to make the food last, trying to figure out what came next. That's when I met Patricia. She came out of an RV parked at the edge of the lot. A big motorhome with Oregon plates, the kind retired couples drove across the country. She was maybe 50 years old, with kind eyes and gray hair pulled into a ponytail. Wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, she looked like someone's grandmother. She saw me sitting on the curb, probably looking like hell, and walked over with a coffee cup in her hand. You okay, sweetheart? I looked up at her. Yeah, I'm fine. She sat down on the curb next to me, knees cracking as she did. I saw you here last night. Saw you this morning. Still in the same clothes. Parents around? Something about the way she asked, not suspicious or accusatory, just genuinely concerned, broke whatever resolve I had left. The words poured out in a messy, desperate rush. I told her everything. About the failing grades, the constant disappointment, the truck stop abandonment, sleeping in the ditch, my parents not answering the phone. Patricia listened without interrupting. Her expression grew darker with each sentence I spoke. When I finally ran out of words, she was quiet for a moment, just looking at me with something that looked like anger, but not at me. Where do you live, sweetheart? Fresno, I said. But I can't go home. They don't want me there. What are your parents' names? I told her. Robert and Linda Mitchell. Gave her our home phone number, the one I'd been calling that kept ringing unanswered. Patricia's jaw tightened. Those people aren't parents. They're criminals. What they did is called child abandonment, and it's illegal. Very illegal. I don't want to get them in trouble, I said, which was stupid considering what they'd done to me. Honey, they're already in trouble. They just don't know it yet. She stood up, knees cracking again. Come on, we're going to the police. I gave the officers my parents' information, explained what happened. They called my house. My mother answered. I sat in a plastic chair at the station while the officer talked to her on the phone in another room. When he came back, his face was grim. Your mother says you ran away from the truck stop after an argument. She says they looked for you for an hour before having to leave for an important business meeting. That's not true, I said, my voice shaking. They left me there on purpose. My dad gave me my backpack and said I needed to grow up. They just drove away. The officer looked uncomfortable. It's your word against theirs. And they're saying they want you to come home. They're very concerned. I'm not going back. You're a minor. You don't have a choice. Patricia stepped in then. I'm a licensed foster care provider in Oregon. I can take temporary custody while this gets sorted out through proper channels. The officer looked relieved to have an option that didn't involve immediate family conflict. We'll need to contact Child Protective Services and start the paperwork. What followed was 3 weeks of bureaucracy. CPS opened an investigation. My parents were interviewed multiple times. They stuck to their story. I'd run away. They'd searched for me. They were devastated by my disappearance. Madison was interviewed too. She told them she saw me standing by the car when they drove away. But my parents coached her to say she'd been asleep and didn't see anything. The investigation went nowhere. No proof either way. Just my word against theirs. But here's the thing. Patricia didn't give up. She petitioned for emergency foster placement, arguing that sending me back to people who'd admitted, in their version, to leaving a 14-year-old at a truck stop was dangerous. The judge agreed to temporary placement while things got sorted out. My parents didn't fight it. They showed up to one hearing, sat stone-faced while their lawyer argued they'd been misunderstood, then never came back. They signed paperwork relinquishing custody without a fight. Just like that, I was gone, and they were free to focus on Madison's success without the burden of their failure son. I moved to Oregon with Patricia. She lived in a small town called Ashland, ran a licensed foster home for kids who needed a safe place. I was her only placement at the time. She enrolled me in the local high school, got me tested for ADHD, surprise, I had it, along with a processing disorder, and started me on medication and accommodations that actually helped. For the first time in my life, school became manageable. Not easy, I still had to work hard, but manageable. I pulled B's and C's instead of D's and F's. I joined the cross-country team because running cleared my head. I made friends who didn't know anything about my past except that I was Patricia's foster kid. I graduated high school with a 3.2 GPA, got accepted to Oregon State. Patricia helped me fill out financial aid forms, drove me to campus for orientation, cried when I moved into my dorm. She was at every milestone my real parents should have been at but weren't. I studied social work. Figured if someone like Patricia could save my life, maybe I could do the same for other kids. Got my bachelor's, then my master's. Started working for Child Protective Services, doing investigations and advocacy work. Met my wife Kelsey during grad school. She was studying psychology, and we bonded over shared interest in helping kids who'd been failed by the system. We got married 3 years ago. Small ceremony, just close friends, and Patricia. No family drama because I didn't have family beyond Patricia anymore. I hadn't spoken to my parents in 17 years. Hadn't tried to contact them. Hadn't responded to the few attempts they'd made. A birthday card when I turned 18, which I threw away. A Facebook friend request from my mom that I ignored. A Christmas card 5 years ago that went straight into the trash. As far as I was concerned, they'd made their choice when they drove away from that truck stop. I made mine by building a life without them. Then 3 weeks ago, the wedding invitation arrived. I stared at it for days. Madison was getting married. Part of me wanted to throw it away like everything else from that family. But another part of me was curious. 17 years is a long time. Had she turned out like them? Did she even remember what happened? Did she care? The invitation included a handwritten note on separate paper. Madison's handwriting, not my parents'. Owen, I don't know if you'll even open this, but I needed to try. I've thought about that day every single day for 17 years. I was too scared to do anything. I regret it more than you'll ever know. If you're willing, I'd really like you to be at my wedding. No pressure, no expectations, just an invitation from your sister who misses you. Madison. Kelsey found me sitting at the kitchen table that night, staring at the note. What's wrong? She asked. I handed her the invitation. She read it, then looked at me. What do you want to do? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to ignore it. They don't get to just pop back into my life like nothing happened. But Madison, she was just a kid too. 16 years old when it happened. What was she supposed to do? That's up to you to decide, Kelsey said. But if you do go, I'm coming with you. Not letting you walk back into that situation alone. I called Patricia that night, told her about the invitation. She listened quietly, then asked one question. What do you need from this, kiddo? If you go, what are you hoping to get? I thought about it. Closure, I guess. I want to see Madison as an adult, see if she turned into them, or if she's different. And if my parents are there, I want them to see what I became despite them. Then go, Patricia said. But go for yourself, not for them. 2 weeks later, Kelsey and I flew to Fresno for the wedding. I'd RSVP'd yes, but hadn't reached out to Madison directly. Figured I'd see how things went. The rehearsal dinner was at this upscale vineyard in the foothills. We arrived late on purpose, didn't want to deal with the pre-dinner awkwardness. Walked into a private dining room with maybe 40 people. Wedding party, close family, friends. Madison saw me immediately. She was standing near the bar with her fiancé, a tall guy with an easy smile. Her face went pale, then flushed. She excused herself and walked straight over to me. Owen, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You came. I hoped, but I didn't think you would. Got your note, I said. She looked older, obviously. 20 years had passed, but she still had the same eyes, same nervous habit of tucking hair behind her ear when she was anxious. Can we talk? She asked. Somewhere private? We ended up on the vineyard's patio, away from the noise. Kelsey gave my hand a squeeze and went to grab drinks, giving us space. I'm so sorry, Madison started, tears already forming. I know that's not enough. I know it doesn't fix anything. But I need you to know that I think about that day all the time. I was terrified. They told me if I said anything to the police, they'd make my life hell. I was 16 and stupid and scared, and I chose wrong. I chose them over you, and I've regretted it every single day since. I didn't say anything at first. Just let her talk. I didn't realize how messed up it was until I got to college, she continued. I started talking to people, hearing about their families, and I realized ours wasn't normal. What they did to you wasn't normal. I tried to bring it up with them a few times, and they shut me down completely. Said you'd made your choices and they'd made theirs. Where are they now? I asked. They're not coming to the wedding, Madison said, wiping her eyes. I didn't invite them. Haven't spoken to them in 3 years. They wanted me to marry this guy from Dad's firm, some architect's son they'd been pushing me toward. When I told them I was dating Brandon instead, they lost it. Said I was throwing away my future. When I got engaged anyway, they gave me an ultimatum. Break up with him or they'd cut me off. She laughed bitterly. I chose him. And you know what? They actually cut me off. Disowned me for not following their plan. That's when I realized they didn't love us. They loved control. We were props in their perfect life performance. And the second we stopped playing our roles, we were disposable. Yeah, I said quietly. I figured that out 17 years ago. I'm so sorry I didn't figure it out sooner, Madison said. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. I'm sorry I let them turn me into someone who could watch her brother get abandoned and do nothing. We talked for almost an hour. She told me about therapy, about confronting the guilt she'd carried, about cutting ties with our parents when she realized they'd never change. I told her about Patricia, about college, about becoming a social worker specifically to help kids like I'd been. You turned out amazing, she said, despite everything they did to you. And I'm so proud to be your sister, even if I don't deserve to be. You were a kid too, I said. We both were. They were the adults. They're the ones who failed. Before we went back inside, Madison asked, "Would you be willing to give a speech tomorrow? At the wedding? I know that's a lot to ask, but I want people to know my real family. Not the version mom and dad sold everyone for years." I thought about it. About walking into a room full of people who probably knew my parents' version of the story. That I'd run away, gotten into trouble, wanted nothing to do with the family. About setting the record straight. "Yeah," I said. "I can do that." The wedding the next day was beautiful. Outdoor ceremony in the vineyard gardens, string lights everywhere, Madison looking genuinely happy in a way I'd never seen when we were kids. Patricia flew in that morning, met Madison properly, cried happy tears. She sat next to me during the ceremony. My parents never showed. I'd asked Madison if they knew I'd be there, and she said she'd told them. Apparently, my mother had called and said they weren't comfortable with me attending, but knew Madison wouldn't change her mind. So they chose not to come, rather than face me. During the reception, when it was time for speeches, I stood up. The room quieted. I could see some of my parents' old friends scattered throughout, people who'd known me as the troubled younger son who'd run away as a teenager. "Most of you don't know me," I started. "I'm Madison's brother, Owen. We haven't seen each other in 17 years because when I was 14 years old, our parents drove me to a truck stop in the desert and left me there. Told me I was a burden and drove away. I slept in a ditch that night. You could hear a pin drop. I was saved by a woman named Patricia." I gestured to where she sat, tears already streaming down her face. "Who found me the next morning and refused to leave me behind. She became my foster mother, helped me finish school, helped me become the person I am today. She showed me what real love looks like, the kind that doesn't come with conditions or disappear when things get hard." I looked at Madison, who was crying openly now, her fiancé's arm around her. I'm here today because Madison had the courage to reach out after all these years. Because she did the work to break free from the same toxic patterns we both grew up in. Because she chose love over control, authenticity over appearances. And that's what family should be. Choosing each other, showing up, doing the hard work. I talked about building the family you need when the family you're born into fails you. About Patricia, about Kelsey, about the people who'd proved through actions that I mattered. I didn't mention my parents by name again, but I told enough of the story that anyone paying attention could fill in the blanks. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. People stood. Several older guests who'd clearly known my parents looked shocked, whispering to each other. Patricia was sobbing. Madison crossed the room and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for being here. Thank you for being strong enough to tell the truth." An older woman approached me afterward, one of my mother's longtime friends from her law firm. "Robert and Linda aren't here," she said carefully. "Did something happen?" "They weren't feeling well," I said neutrally. She studied my face. "You're Owen, the younger child. They said you ran away years ago, got mixed up with drugs, wanted nothing to do with the family. That's not what happened." "I gathered that from your speech," she said quietly. "I'm glad you're here." I'm glad Madison had someone who loved her the right way. Several other guests approached throughout the evening. Some had heard whispers over the years, inconsistencies in my parents' stories. Others were simply moved by the speech and wanted to express support. Each conversation felt like another brick being removed from the wall of lies my parents had built. Brandon's mother, Helen, pulled me aside before dessert. "Madison told me what your parents really did," she said quietly. "I just want you to know that you're family now. Brandon's family, which makes you my family. If you ever need anything, you call me." The kindness from these strangers, people who had no obligation to me, was overwhelming. I'd spent so long believing something was fundamentally wrong with me that I was unlovable. But here were dozens of people moved by my story, offering support without conditions. Later that night, back at the hotel, Kelsey helped me process everything. "You gave them an out," she said. "They could have stayed away quietly, but instead they're probably spinning this to anyone who will listen." "Let them," I said. "The people who matter know the truth now. Madison knows. Patricia knows. Everyone at that dinner knows. Their reputation is damaged, whether they realize it yet or not. Do you think they'll try to contact Madison? Probably. They'll try to control the narrative, make themselves the victims. But Madison's ready for it. She's been ready for years." 3 days later, Madison called me. "They're furious," she said. "Mom's been calling nonstop, saying you blackmailed them, that you're trying to destroy the family." "What did you tell her?" "I told her the only person who destroyed this family was her. Then I blocked both their numbers. Brandon and I are moving to Seattle next month for his job. Fresh start, away from them. Good. Owen, will you visit us once we're settled? Yeah, I said. I'd like that. We talk every week now. She's met Patricia several times, calls her Aunt Patricia like I do. She's working through her own guilt about what happened. She told me she wishes she'd been brave enough to leave with me that day, but she'd been too scared. I understand that fear. Leaving is hard. Surviving after leaving is harder. As for my parents, I never heard from them directly. But I heard through Madison that they're spinning a story to their friends about me being mentally unstable, about having to make the difficult choice to distance themselves for their own well-being. Some people believe them, some don't. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. At 18, my mom made me cancel my birthday because my brother felt left out. So I left, started from nothing, and built a real life. Years later, after seeing I was happy, he showed up furious, demanding my wife, my kid, and my house should be his. Hey Reddit, not sure if this really fits here, but I've been thinking about sharing something that's been sitting in my head for a while. It's about what happened when I turned 18, or more accurately, what didn't happen, and how that one night ended up changing everything about my life and my family. It's not some wild movie plot, just real stuff that still feels unreal when I think back on it. You ever realize you were the responsible one in your family, and it wasn't a compliment? That's basically my childhood summed up. My dad bailed when I was 6. My little brother Seth was 4, so he doesn't even remember having a dad. I do, though. I remember the sound of the front door slamming, and my mom saying, he'll come back when he calms down. Spoiler, he never did. After that, my mom started calling me the man of the house, which apparently meant doing chores, being quiet, and not getting in her way while she spoiled Seth into a miniature dictator. Everything was, he's just sensitive, or you know how Seth gets. I was told to be mature more times than I was told good job. I remember one Christmas when I was 9. Grandpa had mailed us gifts, one for me, one for Seth. Mine was this cool RC truck I'd wanted for months. Seth got some superhero action figure he'd been begging for. It was perfect, for like 3 minutes. Then Seth saw my truck and decided he wanted it. He started wailing, full meltdown mode. Mom rushed in like someone died. Seth, sweetie, what's wrong? I want Shane's toy. He got the better one. I said no, obviously. Grandpa got us both what we asked for. But Mom gave me that look, the one that always meant I was about to lose something. Shane, honey, can you just share? Be mature. No, Mom, it's mine. He got his. Then Seth screamed louder, and that was it. She snatched it from my hands and shoved it at him. Here, fine, Seth, take it. Shane, stop being selfish. I remember standing there holding nothing, watching my brother play with both toys. I asked if I could at least have Seth's, since he clearly didn't need two. Seth burst into fake tears again. Mom said I was starting drama and sent me to my room. That's when I learned that in our house, peace always came before fairness. Fast forward 9 years. I'm 18 now, and apparently nothing's changed. It's the night before my birthday. I'd picked up an extra shift at the auto shop to pay for a small chocolate cake and a cheap pizza. Nothing fancy, just something that felt like mine. I walked in with the box, feeling weirdly proud of myself. Seth's on the couch, glued to his phone. What's that? My cake, I said. He frowned like I'd just insulted him. You're really doing all that for yourself? Yeah, crazy concept, right? Celebrating my birthday. He rolled his eyes. It's not fair. You always get to do everything first. Seth, it's called being born 2 years earlier. Or that set him off. It's just stupid that you get to be an adult before me. Mom, here we go. Mom came out of the kitchen drying her hands on a towel. What's going on now? Seth crossed his arms, putting on that fake victim voice. He's rubbing it in my face that he's turning 18 and I'm not. I looked at her, waiting for the obvious response. Something like, Seth, that's life. But no. Mom sighed. Shane, do you have to flaunt it? Flaunt what? Existing? She gave me the disappointed mom look. You know how sensitive your brother is. Maybe just skip the cake this year, okay? Be mature about it. There it was. The magic phrase that made every unfair thing sound reasonable. Be mature. You're serious, I said. It's just one birthday. You're an adult now. Seth's still my baby. Seth smirked from the couch, already over it, like he won something again. Something in me clicked off right then. I didn't yell, didn't argue, just stood there with that stupid cake in my hands, realizing this was never going to change. I set the cake on the counter and walked to my room. I didn't slam the door. I didn't even sigh. In my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the crack in the ceiling I used to trace when I couldn't sleep as a kid. I could hear them downstairs, Seth laughing again, Mom chatting with him like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just told her firstborn son his birthday didn't matter. I opened my closet and stared at the old duffel bag on the top shelf, the one I used when we went on the one and only family trip, years ago, before Dad left. I pulled it down, dust flying off like even it had given up on this house. I didn't know exactly where I was going yet. I just knew I was done playing the mature loser in someone else's family circus. I packed slow. Clothes, a few documents, cash I'd been saving from my part-time job. When I zipped the bag, it didn't feel heavy. It felt like freedom with a handle. Downstairs, the laughter had turned into the sound of the TV. I stood at my door for a long moment, listening. Then I whispered to myself, "Be mature, right?" and smiled. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I just waited for the house to go quiet enough to disappear. I could hear Seth snoring from his room, that obnoxious, heavy sleep of someone who never worried a day in his life. Mom's bedroom light flicked off around midnight, and that was my signal. The duffel bag sat on the floor by my bed, half open with the essentials: clothes, some cash, my phone charger. Leaving wasn't about the birthday. That was just the final nudge after years of being the backup character in my own story. When I was 13, I joined the basketball team at school. We were nobodies, but somehow we clawed our way to the county finals. I played like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. We won, and for once, Mom actually looked proud. She even threw a tiny celebration at home. Balloons, pizza, the whole deal. I remember sitting there smiling, thinking maybe things were finally changing. Then Seth started crying. He said it wasn't fair that everyone's proud of Shane and not me. He was 11. Instead of telling him to calm down, Mom hugged him like he was the one who just won the game. "It's okay, baby. You'll have your moment." Then she turned to me and said, "Let's tone it down, okay? We don't want him feeling left out." The next morning, the balloons were gone. She said she took them down because they were too much. After that, no more celebrations. No birthdays, no achievements, nothing. Seth's feelings were the only thing that ever got celebrated. Back in the present, I stood there staring at my packed bag. Every second felt heavier, like the air itself was holding me back. I slipped on my hoodie, the one with paint stains from the summer job I did 2 years ago, and took a last look around my room. The posters, the cracked window, the dent in the wall from when Seth threw my basketball at me, all of it just memories of me playing peacekeeper while Mom called me mature for staying quiet. I turned off the light, opened the door slowly, and stepped into the hallway. The house creaked like it was tattling on me. I froze, listening. Nothing. Just the hum of the fridge and the distant ticking of the living room clock. At the bottom, I grabbed my truck keys off the hook and looked toward the living room. The stupid chocolate cake was still on the counter, the one I didn't get to eat. I scraped off a bite with my finger, whispered, "Happy birthday" to me, and walked out. The night air hit me like a slap, cold, sharp, and free. My old pickup sat under the streetlight, a dented relic with more rust than paint, but it was mine. I loaded the bag into the passenger seat and climbed in. I glanced back at the house one last time, that same house where I'd spent 18 years playing second place. Every light was off. Nobody was coming to stop me. I didn't know where I was going, just that anywhere else was better than there. I drove until the neighborhood turned into open highway. I didn't feel sad, just hollow, like I'd already left long before my body did. By 3 a.m., I pulled into the parking lot of my buddy Ben's house. He lived across town, the kind of guy who always said, "Call me if you ever need a place," the kind you never think you'll actually call. I texted him anyway. "You awake?" I sent, "It's 3 a.m., dude. What's up?" He replied, "Can I crash at yours for a bit? Garage doors open, couch is free." That's why he was my best friend. No questions, no judgment. I parked quietly, grabbed my duffel, and slipped inside through the side door. His dog lifted its head, gave one lazy wag of the tail, and went back to sleep. The couch was cold, but it was mine for the night. The next morning, I woke to the smell of bacon. Ben's mom, the kindest woman on earth, just smiled when she saw me. "Morning, Shane. You hungry?" I nodded, voice cracked. "Yeah, a bit." She didn't ask why I was there. She didn't need to. She just slid a plate of eggs and toast in front of me like it was the most normal thing in the world. Ben sat across from me, hair a mess, yawning. "So, you really did it, huh?" "Yeah," I said, chewing slowly. "Guess I finally grew up." He grinned. "About time." For the first time in years, I laughed. Not out of sarcasm, not to deflect, just a real laugh. It felt strange, like remembering a language I'd forgotten. There was guilt, yeah, but there was peace too. Nobody was calling me selfish for existing. Nobody was asking me to be mature. Just quiet, freedom, and breakfast that actually tasted like it belonged to me. That was the first real meal of my life, and I didn't even realize it yet. I stayed on Ben's couch for a week before I found a room for rent through one of his relatives. The place was basically a walk-in closet with a sink that dripped and a mattress that smelled faintly of wet cardboard. But it had a door that locked, and that was enough. By day, I filled out job applications like it was my new religion. Most places didn't even call back. Finally, one warehouse on the industrial side of town said they needed a guy for graveyard shifts, moving boxes, loading pallets, the usual grunt work. The pay was garbage, but I didn't hesitate. They said I could start the next night. That first shift nearly killed me. 12 hours of nonstop lifting, carrying, stacking, sweating under buzzing fluorescent lights. The air smelled like oil and dust. My hands were raw by the time I clocked out. But when the supervisor handed me that first crumpled check a week later, even if it wasn't much, I felt something I'd never felt before. Pride. Every dollar was mine. No one could take it or guilt me for earning it. Nights blurred into weeks. My room became a routine. Instant noodles, cold showers, the hum of the mini fan that worked only on its medium setting. Sometimes I'd stare at the ceiling thinking about how weirdly peaceful it was, even with nothing around me. No yelling, no guilt trips, no walking on eggshells so Seth didn't cry. The only noise that tried to drag me back came from my phone. Mom called every day at first. I'd see her name flash across the screen and feel my stomach twist. I ignored the first few. Then came the voicemails. Shane, this isn't funny. You scared your brother. I can't believe you'd abandon your family like this. You think you're better than us now? Same script, different tone. None of them asked if I was okay. It was all about how I made them feel. Eventually, the calls slowed, then stopped. I waited a few days, expecting another round of guilt, but silence was all I got. That's when it clicked. They never really wanted me there. They just wanted control. Winter rolled in faster than I expected. I didn't own a proper coat, so I layered hoodies like armor and kept working through the cold. The warehouse heaters barely worked, and some nights, the only thing keeping me warm was adrenaline and bad coffee. One morning, around 4 a.m., I was heading home after a shift when my truck sputtered and died at a stoplight. I tried restarting it. Nothing. The engine just coughed and gave up like it was tired too. I sat there for a minute, fog from my breath clouding the windshield, and pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over Mom's number. I hadn't called her in months. For a second, I imagined her answering. Dramatic sigh, fake worry, then the inevitable, see what happens when you try to do everything on your own? That was enough. I dropped my phone on the seat, stepped out, and started walking. 5 miles in freezing air. My breath came out in clouds, and the tips of my fingers went numb. My shoes were soaked from the slush, and every few minutes I told myself I'd stop at the next gas station. But I didn't. I kept walking. Somewhere between mile 2 and 3, my anger turned into focus. Each step felt like me hammering that promise deeper into my bones. I'd never go back. Not even for help. Not even to prove a point. Just never again. By the time I reached my apartment, the sun was coming up. I collapsed onto the mattress and stared at the ceiling. My whole body ached, but I wasn't mad. I was proud. Proud that I didn't fold the second life got hard. Proud that I walked every damn mile instead of crawling back. That morning, I skipped sleep and went straight to the library. I used one of their ancient computers to sign up for community college night classes. I didn't know what I wanted to major in. I just knew I wanted to keep moving forward. The next few months were a blur of exhaustion and progress. I'd work 10 hours, grab fast food from the dollar menu, then drag myself to a 7 p.m. class about logistics and management. Most nights I'd fight to stay awake, but somehow I passed every exam. People at the warehouse started noticing. The older guys called me college boy as a joke, but when the supervisor needed someone reliable, he called me first. I took every shift I could, saved every extra dollar. On weekends, I fixed the truck myself using parts from the scrapyard. It wasn't pretty, but it ran again, just like me. Sometimes I'd drive out to the old neighborhood at night, park a few blocks away, and just sit there. I never went close enough for them to see me, but I'd watch the lights in the house. Seth's room, still glowing late like always. Mom's shadow moving in the kitchen. Nothing had changed. I remember thinking how strange it was that the place that used to feel like a cage now looked so small from the outside. A few months later, I got promoted to shift lead. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was steady. For the first time in my life, I could afford more than noodles. I even bought a proper jacket, not expensive, but warm. Every payday, I'd fold the check in half and just stare at it for a second before cashing it. Not because it was much, but because it was proof I'd survived without them. No calls. No be mature. No Seth screaming in the background. Just me. And that was enough. 7 years later, that line still ran through my head sometimes, when I'd pull into the driveway of my new house after a long shift. The house wasn't big. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, cracked driveway. But it was mine. Every tile, every nail, every drop of sweat that built it had my name on it. I was 25 now, a warehouse supervisor. Yeah, same place I started as the rookie stacking boxes, except now I was the one barking orders and fixing everyone else's screw-ups. The pay wasn't life-changing, but it was solid. I had savings, health insurance, and a fridge full of food that didn't come from a dollar menu. Most nights, when I'd pull into that driveway and see the porch light on, I'd smile. Claire always left it on for me. Said it made the place feel warm, like home. She was the kind of woman who didn't care about fancy stuff, just effort. She met me back when I was taking night classes, juggling shifts, half dead from work, and somehow decided I was worth sticking around for. We got married when I was 21 at the courthouse with 2 witnesses and no drama. No family, just us. A year later, Eli was born, our son. He looked like her but had my stubbornness, which is equal parts adorable and terrifying. I'd sit there some nights, just watching them, Claire rocking Eli to sleep, and think, nobody can take this from me now. This wasn't luck. This was earned, built from nothing but my own 2 hands and the decision to leave behind everything that broke me. By now, Eli was almost 4, all energy and questions, and somehow already better at building things than I was at his age. Then, one random afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number, known. Normally, I ignore those, but something told me to pick up. Shane, a familiar voice said. It's your grandpa. I froze. I hadn't heard that voice in years. He sounded older, softer. Hey, I said carefully. Didn't expect to hear from you? He chuckled. Didn't expect a call, to be honest. I just wanted to see how you're doing, son. I'm good. Real good, actually. There was a pause. You did the right thing, leaving. That caught me off guard. Yeah? Yeah. I told your mom years ago that spoiling Seth would ruin him. She didn't listen. I even warned her after your dad left that making you the man of the house wasn't fair. You were a kid. But she never heard me. Too busy protecting Seth from the world. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window at the yard I'd mowed the day before. I used to think I was crazy for leaving. You weren't crazy, he said. You were surviving. That line hit me. Surviving. That's exactly what it was. He sighed. I'm not calling to drag anyone through the mud. Just wanted to make sure you're okay. I heard bits and pieces. Your mom said you're doing fine but doesn't talk much about you. I'm good, Grandpa, I said, smiling slightly. Got a family now. A son. He let out this warm laugh. A boy, huh? Bet he's smarter than all of us already. Working on it. I'm proud of you, Shane. You broke the pattern. That's not easy. We talked another 10 minutes, mostly small stuff. Weather, work, how his knees were shot, but his garden was thriving. When we hung up, I sat there staring at my phone for a while. It was weird. The first time in years someone from my family reached out without judgment or guilt attached. It didn't fix anything, but it felt good. That night, when Claire came home, she had that look like she was planning something. Hey, she said, put on something decent. I'm taking you out. I raised an eyebrow. To where? The fancy gas station down the street? She smirked. No, genius. A real restaurant. You deserve it. I almost said no. I hate eating out. But she gave me that look, and I caved. We got dressed, dropped Eli off at her sister's, and drove into town. The restaurant was one of those nice but not pretentious places. Dim lights, jazz playing, waiters with fake smiles. Claire looked amazing, and I was just happy to sit with her, away from the noise of work. Then, halfway through our meal, I heard a laugh that made my stomach twist. That high-pitched fake laugh I'd grown up with. Mom's. I looked up, and sure enough, 2 tables across, there they were. Mom and Seth. Seth looked about the same. Older, taller, but with the same smug face that used to drive me insane. Mom was dressed up like she was auditioning for a midlife crisis commercial, sipping wine and nodding along as Seth talked about something animatedly. Claire followed my gaze. You okay? I nodded slowly. Yeah, just didn't expect to run into old ghosts tonight. Mom hadn't seen me yet. Seth was too busy scrolling on his phone, probably complaining about how hard his day was. For a second, I considered pretending I didn't see them, just finishing dinner, leaving, and never thinking about it again. But part of me, The part that spent 18 years swallowing every insult, every ignored birthday, every forced be mature, wanted to be seen. I looked at Claire and said, let's not leave just yet, because sometimes you don't plan revenge. You just sit back and let fate serve it at the next table. Claire must have sensed I wasn't moving. She reached for my hand under the table and gave it a squeeze, the kind that said, whatever happens, I'm with you. I didn't even have time to decide what to do before Seth's voice cut through the room like a broken speaker. No freaking way, he said, loud enough for half the restaurant to turn. Shane? Holy crap, it's actually you. He stood up, grinning like we were long-lost best friends. Mom turned, eyes widening as she saw me. For a second, her smile almost looked genuine. Then she glanced at Claire, at the nice clothes, at the rings on our hands, and that familiar mix of surprise and guilt flashed across her face. Seth strutted over before I could react. Wow, man. Look at you. Married? Fancy restaurant? Must be nice. I leaned back in my chair. Hey, Seth, you're still alive? That's cool. He blinked, confused by my calm tone. Yeah, I'm alive. Mom told me you just got up and left like we didn't matter. Didn't matter? I said. I think that's been my role since birth. Mom winced. Shane, please, not here. Seth cut her off. You abandoned us. I had to grow up without my brother because you couldn't handle being part of a family. I let out a short laugh. Not mean, just tired. Seth, you were 16 when I left. You didn't need a brother. You needed a leash. A few people nearby chuckled under their breath. Claire hid her smile behind her water glass. Mom hissed, Don't start, Shane. No, Mom, I said, leaning forward. Let's actually talk since apparently I'm the villain here. Let's talk about all the times I was told to be mature while Seth got everything he cried for. My canceled birthday because he was jealous. My basketball win. You pretended didn't exist because he threw a tantrum. You called that parenting. I called it survival. Seth's face turned red. You think you're better than us now? With your little job and your little family? I don't think I'm better, I said calmly. I just learned to live without expecting fairness. He laughed, but it came out shaky. You think you can just run away and get rewarded for it? Funny, I said. You think you can sit on your mom's couch for 20 years and get rewarded for it? That one hit. His jaw tightened. The table next to us had gone completely silent. Then Seth leaned forward, eyes wild. I want what you have, he said, voice rising. You don't deserve it. I want your life. The wife, the kid, the house, all of it should have been mine. He leaned towards Claire. You don't want to stay with this loser. Come with me. The words hung there like poison. Even Mom looked stunned. Claire's hand froze in midair. The whole restaurant went quiet except for the low hum of background music. I stood up slowly, chair scraping against the floor. You want my life, Seth? I asked quietly. He looked smug, thinking I was about to back down. Yeah. Why should you get it? You left. You don't deserve the good ending. That's when something in me snapped. Not in anger, just finality. I grabbed him by the collar and pulled him close enough for him to see how calm my face was. Listen to me, Seth. You don't deserve anything because you don't build anything. You whine, you take, you throw tantrums, and you expect the world to bend. You're not a victim. You're just lazy. His eyes went wide. His hands froze in midair. I tightened my grip just enough to make him pay attention. You want a life like mine? Earn it. Stop being a man-child. Stop blaming everyone else. And for once in your life, act like you're older than 12. Breathe, then I shoved him back. Not hard, but enough that he stumbled into the table behind him. A couple glasses clinked, a waiter gasped, and Seth stood there pale, humiliated, breathing like he'd just run a mile. Mom's voice shook. Shane? No, Mom, I said, turning to her. You made him this way. You spent years protecting him from consequences. And now look at him, a grown man who thinks he's owed everything. You thought you were being a good mom, but you just broke us both in different ways. For once, she didn't argue. She just looked down, hands trembling, eyes glossy. Maybe she finally saw it. Not the yelling, not the drama, just the truth sitting there between us. Seth muttered something under his breath, then turned and walked out, shoulders slumped. The same way he used to waddle off after losing a toy as a kid. Some things never change. Mom sat back down at her table, quiet. After a long pause, she reached into her purse and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. She walked over, eyes red but steady, and placed it in front of me. My new number, she said softly. If you ever want to talk. Not for him, for me. I stared at it for a second, then nodded once. Take care of yourself, Mom. She gave a weak smile and went back to her seat, staring at the table like she was trying to unsee everything that just happened. Claire reached across the table, her voice low. You okay? I exhaled. Yeah, actually, I am. We paid the check and walked out. As the door closed behind us, I glanced through the glass one last time. Mom was still sitting there, staring at the empty seat across from her. For once, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Not because I embarrassed them, but because I didn't let them rewrite history again. The night air felt colder than before, but clean. Claire slipped her hand into mine. So, she said with a grin, still think going out was a bad idea? I smirked. Yeah, totally awful night. She laughed and we walked to the car, leaving the ghosts right where they belonged. For the next few weeks, life went back to normal, or as normal as it could after a public family meltdown. I didn't think about that night much, at least not during the day. But sometimes, when the house was quiet and Eli was asleep, I'd catch myself replaying it. Seth's words, Mom's face, the silence afterward. Then, one evening after work, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it until I saw the message preview. This is your mom. I don't expect a reply, but I wanted to say I'm sorry for all of it. I sat there for a full minute just staring at it. No manipulation, no guilt trip, just words I'd never heard from her before. Claire walked in, drying her hands. You okay? Yeah, I said, still looking at the screen. Just, my mom. She came over, reading the message over my shoulder. That's new. Yeah, real new. Gonna answer? I thought about it. Not tonight. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about it. For the next few days, every time I picked up my phone, that text sat there like a loose thread I couldn't ignore. 3 days later, another message came. You don't have to talk to me, but I just want you to know I mean it. I know I hurt you. That one hit different. I walked outside, sat on the porch, and before I could overthink it, I dialed her number. She answered before the first ring finished. Shane? Yeah, it's me. Oh, honey, she said, her voice cracking. Thank you for calling. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The silence was thick, years of unspoken things hanging in the air. I didn't call for a fight, I said finally. I know. I'm not here to defend anything. She sighed. I just want to tell you the truth. I was scared. Of what? Of losing Seth. Of failing him. Her voice trembled. When your dad left, Seth was just a baby. He didn't even remember him. I did everything I could to make up for that. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that I had 2 sons, not one. I stayed quiet. I told myself you were strong, she went on, that you didn't need as much attention, that you'd be fine no matter what I did. And that wasn't fair. I made you carry everything so Seth wouldn't have to carry anything. I leaned back against the porch railing, staring at the sunset. You knew what you were doing, though. You saw it. I did, she admitted. And I convinced myself it was love. That protecting him was love. But I wasn't protecting anyone. I was just avoiding guilt. That one hit harder than I expected. I can't change it, she said quietly. I just hope someday you can let me try to do better. It was weird, hearing her talk like this. No excuses, no deflection, just honesty. For the first time in my life, she wasn't talking at me. She was talking to me. I don't know what I feel about all this, I said honestly. But thanks for saying it. That's enough for me right now. We hung up not long after, both kind of awkward, like neither of us knew how to end a normal conversation. A week later, she texted again. Can we meet? Just to talk? I'd love to see you. No expectations. Part of me wanted to delete it, pretend it never came. But another part, the part that had built a life without bitterness, said maybe it was time. So I said yes. We met at a small park near the lake on a Saturday morning. Claire came with me, mostly for moral support. And of course, Eli was there too, running around with his toy truck and yelling about ducks. When Mom showed up, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked older, smaller somehow, but calmer. She smiled nervously, clutching her purse like it might float away. Hi, she said. Hey. She spotted Eli instantly. That's him? Yeah, I said. That's Eli. She didn't rush to pick him up or smother him with affection like I half expected. She just stood there, watching him laugh as he chased a bird. Her eyes got glassy. He's beautiful, she whispered. You're a good dad. Trying to be, I said. We sat on a bench, awkward silence stretching between us. Claire wandered off with Eli, giving us space. I've thought about this moment a lot, Mom said after a while. What I'd say, how you'd react. But I think I just want to sit here for a bit. That's fine. She nodded, exhaling slowly. When I saw you at the restaurant, I realized something. Seth's not the only one I failed. I failed myself too. I spent so long trying to fix what your dad broke that I didn't notice I was breaking you. I didn't know what to say to that. We sat in silence again. Eli came running up, holding a leaf like it was gold. Daddy, look! I smiled, took it from him, and ruffled his hair. That's a good one, bud. Mom watched us, her expression soft but heavy. You're really happy, aren't you? Yeah, I said. I am. She smiled faintly. That makes me happy too. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. When it was time to go, she just said, Thank you for letting me see you. I nodded. Take care, Mom. As I buckled Eli into his car seat, I caught her watching us from the bench, hands folded, shoulders shaking a little. Driving home, Claire asked quietly, How do you feel? I thought for a long moment. Lighter? I said finally. Not fixed. Just lighter. She smiled. That's a start. And maybe it was. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel owed. I didn't feel like that kid who got his Christmas gift stolen. I just felt done carrying the weight. That feeling didn't fade. It grew. Over the next year, life didn't magically fix itself, but it got steadier, quieter, realer. Mom started proving she meant what she said. She didn't smother, didn't push, didn't try to rewrite the past. She just showed up when she said she would. Sometimes she'd text, thinking of Eli, or ask if she could stop by to drop off something small, a kid's book, or cookies she baked. She told me she started therapy, and I believed her. She never bragged about it, never used it as a weapon to prove she was better. She just talked like a human being for once. And when she came over, she followed every rule we set. No guilt trips, no bringing up Seth unless I asked. Meanwhile, Seth, well, his world didn't fare as well. Grandpa called once and told me he'd moved back in with Mom for a while, burned through jobs like they were napkins. Got fired twice, argued with neighbors, still thought everyone was against him. I didn't feel joy hearing it, just a quiet confirmation. I'd been right to walk away. Some people never grow until they run out of enablers. Mom eventually made him move out again. She said she couldn't keep cleaning up his messes. Hearing her say that felt surreal, like she'd finally seen the mess she helped create. A few months later, she came to Eli's 5th birthday. She didn't try to play Grandmother of the Year. She stood in the background, took pictures, laughed at his goofy dance moves, and handed him a small box wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a tiny wooden truck, hand-carved, painted blue. Made it myself, she said. Figured he might like something simple. Eli hugged it like treasure. Thanks, Nana. The word caught her off guard. Her eyes watered, but she didn't make it dramatic. Just smiled and whispered, You're welcome, buddy. That night, after everyone left, I sat outside while Claire cleaned up the last of the cake plates. The yard was quiet except for the sound of Eli laughing inside, probably still playing with that wooden truck. I thought about everything. That Christmas years ago, the basketball trophy I never got to celebrate, the night I walked out with nothing but a duffel bag and a stubborn heart. It all led here. Claire came out, sat beside me, leaned her head on my shoulder. He had a good birthday, she said. Yeah, I said. He did. Mom wasn't perfect, but she was trying. And Seth? Maybe one day he'd get tired of crashing and start building. Either way, it wasn't my job to save him. This life, the small house, the laughter, the quiet, it was mine. Earned, not inherited. As I stood to go back inside, I looked at Claire and said, You know, I didn't walk out to hurt them. She smiled softly. I know. I looked back at the window, where Eli was waving his toy truck in the air like a trophy. I walked out to live, I said. And I did. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Working since 15. Never asked for a dime and still paid off. My own education. I built my own business from nothing. Got sued by my parents for refusing to fund my sister's influencer career. TLDR. Worked my tail off since 15. Built successful construction business. Family sued me for 50% because I wouldn't bankroll my gold digger sister's fake influencer lifestyle. Universe served them the coldest revenge possible. What's up, Reddit? Long-time lurker. First time posting something this personal. I'm still processing what happened and figured you guys might appreciate this justice story. Fair warning, this gets wild and the ending is satisfying as heck. I, 31 male, and this mess started when I was about 12. For context, I grew up in suburban Phoenix in a middle-class family that looked normal from outside, but was completely dysfunctional behind closed doors. This is about family favoritism, entitlement, and what happens when spoiled brats try to lawyer their way into other people's success. We lived in a decent neighborhood, nothing fancy but respectable. Dad, Robert, made $50,000 fixing Toyotas. Mom, Patricia, did part-time bookkeeping for $20,000. Then there's my sister Brittany, 6 years younger, and the undisputed golden child of our family. From day one, Brittany could literally break something expensive, and my parents would blame me for not watching her carefully enough. She was daddy's little princess, while I was just the responsible kid who took out trash and kept his mouth shut. When I was 12, Brittany started dance and pageants. The money they dropped was insane. $300 costumes worn once, $500 pageant dresses for competitions she rarely placed in, $75 per hour coaches, $400 photo shoots every few months. We're talking thousands monthly on this spoiled brat. The pageant circuit was like a cult. Brittany absorbed the toxic environment and started acting already famous, practicing her interview walk around the house and demanding special meals because pageant girls have to watch their figure. Me? I asked for a $20 video game and got lectured about being grateful and money not growing on trees. By 13, our room situation said everything. Brittany had custom princess pink furniture, giant flat screen with every streaming service, walk-in closet full of designer clothes. My room had a squeaky Walmart twin bed, broken secondhand dresser, and garage sale everything. The breaking point came at 14. I wanted to join wrestling team. $150 for gear and fees. Dad looked at me like I'd asked for a sports car. Jake, we can't afford that. Money's tight with Brittany's competitions. That same week, they spent $800 on her new dance outfit because the old one was last season. That's when I realized I was invisible, unless they needed someone to blame. So I made my own way. Started cutting lawns for $20 to $30 each, got 8 regular customers, found an old guy who needed handyman help around rental properties. He taught me construction, plumbing, electrical, real skills that would actually matter. This neighbor became the dad I never had, paying me $12 an hour while explaining business, saving money, building something real. Most kids your age worry about video games, he'd say, installing flooring. You're learning to build a future. Meanwhile, Princess Brittany got worse. One competition, she placed 3rd out of 12 and had a complete meltdown about judges not understanding her vision and her costume not being sparkly enough. My parents spent the drive home planning what they'd buy to boost her confidence. When I turned 16, I'd saved enough for a beat-up F-150, $3,500 cash, plus insurance and gas. Dad's first comment? Hope you're not planning to neglect chores now that you have wheels? No congratulations. Just immediate assumption I'd become irresponsible. That same month, they bought Brittany a brand new $18,000 Honda Civic for her birthday. She didn't even have her permit yet, but they wanted her to have reliable transportation. The car sat untouched for 2 months. Every slight, every dollar spent on her while ignoring my needs, it all went into my mental fuel tank. Junior year, I worked full-time for my neighbor after school and weekends. The work was brutal. Drywall in cramped spaces, painting houses in summer heat, installing flooring on my knees for hours. But I loved learning real skills. He bumped me to $15 an hour and taught me the business side, estimating jobs, ordering materials, dealing with suppliers. You've got a natural head for this, Jake, he'd say, installing cabinets. You could run your own operation someday. Despite working 25-plus hours weekly, I maintained solid grades, A's and B's. I'd do homework in my truck during lunch, study while eating dinner, write papers late at night covered in sawdust. Brittany, meanwhile, discovered social media and decided she was going to be an influencer. At 13-14, she'd spend hours taking selfies, making TikTok videos with maybe 20 views, begging my parents for money for content. This girl had 200 followers, but acted like the next big thing. She'd order $500 worth of clothes online, photograph them with elaborate lighting setups, then return half claiming they didn't photograph well. My parents called this entrepreneurial spirit. She developed this whole online persona posting quotes about living your best life and manifesting success, while doing literally nothing except taking pictures. Her captions were filled with hashtags like influencer life blessed entrepreneur when she'd never earned a dollar. Worse was her attitude toward peasants, anyone she considered beneath her, including me. I'd come home exhausted from real work, and she'd make comments like, "You, Jake, you smell like poor people," or "I can't wait to move out so I don't have to see you looking like a homeless person." One time, after 12 hours installing hardwood floors, barely able to walk, she wrinkled her nose. "Could you at least shower before dinner? Some of us have standards." This from someone who'd spent the day taking backyard selfies. My parents encouraged it. "Brittany's just confident," Mom would say. "She knows her worth." Senior year, I'd saved $12,000 and planned community college first, then transfer to state university. Smart, cost-effective plan that would leave me under $20,000 in debt. Brittany, now a sophomore with a 2.3 GPA, announced she wanted some expensive California art school for social media marketing. Not for education, but because it would be good for her brand. When acceptances came, I got into state university with a partial academic scholarship covering 40% of costs. My parents' reaction? That's nice, Jake. That was it. Same week, Brittany got waitlisted, and they spent $2,000 on a college consultant, charging $200 per hour to edit her Instagram posts and write essays about her digital marketing experience. The final insult came at graduation dinner. Dad dropped the bomb. Jake, we think you should contribute $400 monthly for room and board when you're home from college. $400 a month to live in my childhood bedroom while working full-time to pay for my own education. Meanwhile, they were planning to spend $65,000 annually on Princess Brittany's college without expecting any contribution from her. I told them I'd think about it, but I was already making other plans. I went to State University with a clear plan. Business degree with construction technology minor, then start my own company. College was financially brutal, even with my scholarship and savings. I worked 20 hours weekly at campus restaurant washing dishes, full-time with my neighbor during breaks on complex renovations. No spring break trips, no party lifestyle, just work, study, repeat. While other students slept until noon, I was up at 6 a.m. for opening shifts. While they hit happy hours, I studied in the library until closing. Meanwhile, Brittany was living her best life at her overpriced art school. My parents dropped $65,000 annually on her digital media communications degree, basically Instagram studies. Every visit home, she'd brag about designer clothes for networking events, $300 brunch spreads for content creation, spring break trips to Cabo that cost more than my entire semester budget. All funded by mom and dad, who were draining retirement savings and taking plus loans. My followers love seeing authentic college experience, she'd say, showing photos of her ridiculous brunches. Brands want someone who actually lives the lifestyle they're promoting. Her follower count had grown to maybe 2,000. Mostly bought bots with tiny sponsorship deals. $50 for sketchy teeth whitening products, $75 for protein shakes she never drank. She was spending roughly $200 for every dollar earned, but convinced herself this was building her brand. When I pointed out she spent more on coffee than she made from sponsorships, she'd roll her eyes. Jake, you don't understand business. This is investment in my personal brand. You have to spend money to make money. Right. Spending $200 on dinner for 50 likes was definitely solid business strategy. Junior year, I started taking small construction jobs independently. Bathroom renovations, deck repairs, small additions. My neighbor let me use his tools and supplier connections in exchange for helping with bigger projects. I was making $25 to $30 hourly and learning every business aspect. One bathroom gut job for a young couple really opened my eyes. 3 weeks of work, they paid me $8,500 for materials and subcontractor fees that cost maybe $3,000. Even after paying my neighbor for tools and advice, I cleared over $4,000 in 3 weeks. That's when I realized construction's real profit potential. My family relationship was basically non-existent. I'd come home for holidays and they'd spend the entire time discussing Brittany's career and education costs. Mom would show me Brittany's Instagram posts like gallery art. I was invisible unless they needed repairs. Garbage disposal breaks? Call Jake. Leaky faucet? Jake will handle it. The breaking point came Christmas of junior year. I'd maintained a 3.6 GPA while working 25 hours weekly. Exhausted but proud, looking forward to relaxing. Christmas morning, Brittany opened thousands in presents. MacBook Pro for professional content creation, designer handbags for brand partnerships, jewelry for sponsored posts, expensive skincare for beauty collaborations. Everything justified as business expenses. My gift? $50 Home Depot gift card and lecture about not expecting handouts now that I was adult. Then Brittany made the comment that changed everything. At least Jake is finally learning a trade, she smirked, taking selfies with her haul, planning her Christmas unboxing post. Someone has to be the worker bee while the rest of us become successful. Worker bee. To my face. On Christmas morning, while opening presents worth more than I made in 3 months. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to say something. Anything. They just sat there like this was normal. That was it. I was done. I finished college with minimal family contact, became a polite stranger. My neighbor wanted to sell his business at huge discount. We arranged a 5-year buyout deal where I'd take over all contracts and relationships. By graduation, everything was lined up. Business loan approved, licensing handled, insurance sorted. 3 major summer contracts worth over $45,000. Brittany graduated the same year with her useless degree and moved home, announcing she'd focus full-time on her influencer career while needing parental support to build her brand. At 22, she had maybe 5,000 followers, half bots. No real income besides occasional $50 sponsorship deals, an entitlement that would make royalty jealous. Me? I had a business plan and skills to execute it. Right out of college, I hit ground running with my construction business. My neighbor had set me up perfectly. I inherited his crew of 3 experienced guys who'd been working with him for years, his supplier relationships that got me contractor discounts, and solid reputation in local market built over 20 years. First year was brutal, working 70 to 80-hour weeks learning how to manage employees who were older and more experienced than me, dealing with difficult clients who tried to change project scope midway through, handling all business admin stuff like payroll, taxes, insurance claims, and permit applications. But it was my business. Every dollar I made, every relationship I built, every success was mine. When client was happy with finished bathroom renovation, they were praising my work. When referral led to bigger project, it was because of reputation I was building. Within 6 months, I was booking out 3 weeks in advance. Word of mouth in construction is everything, and my guys did quality work fast. We specialized in residential renovations, kitchens that transformed outdated spaces into modern showpieces, bathrooms that went from cramped disasters to spa-like retreats, additions that seamlessly blended with existing architecture, whole house remodels that doubled property values. Meanwhile, Princess Brittany was struggling with reality. Turns out having 5,000 fake followers doesn't translate to actual income. Who could have seen that coming? She'd wake up at noon, spend 3 hours doing her makeup and picking outfits for content shoots, take 500 photos to post one candid shot, then complain that brands weren't taking her seriously. Her biggest sponsorship deal was $200 for promoting some multi-level marketing skincare crap that probably contained more chemicals than actual beneficial ingredients. Her daily routine was pathetic to watch. She'd set up elaborate photo shoots in our backyard using bed sheets as backdrops, take hundreds of photos in slightly different poses, then spend hours editing them with filters and apps that made her barely recognizable. All this effort for posts that got maybe 100 likes, mostly from other wannabe influencers doing follow-for-follow schemes. But instead of getting real job or reassessing her life choices, she doubled down on delusion. She convinced my parents to fund professional photo shoot, $2,500, website redesign, $1,800, and some social media management course, $3,200, taught by someone who probably had fewer real followers than she did. I just need to invest more in my brand, she'd say while eating cereal at 2 p.m. All successful influencers say you have to spend money to make money. It's about playing long game. My parents somehow bought into this nonsense. They were still paying her phone bill, car insurance, health insurance, plus giving her $1,200 a month in living expenses while she lived at home rent-free. They'd rationalized it as supporting her during launch phase of her business. They'd even converted garage into content studio for her, complete with ring lights, backdrop stands, professional camera equipment, and climate control so she could shoot year-round. Another $4,000 down drain for what was essentially elaborate playroom for grown woman. Worst part was listening to her talk about money, like she had any clue what work was. She'd see my dirty work clothes and truck and make comments like, "When I'm successful, I'll hire people like Jake to fix my mansions. It's important to support blue-collar workers." Or she'd complain about brands not paying her enough. "These companies are so cheap. They only want to pay me $100 for post when I have almost 8,000 followers now." She'd bought another 3,000 fake followers, thinking nobody would notice the sudden spike in followers with zero engagement. Meanwhile, I was making more in week than she'd made all year from her career. By end of my second year in business, I was pulling in $180,000 annually and had expanded a crew of 6 guys. I bought my first house, 1,800 square foot ranch, that I renovated myself using skills I'd learned over years. Nothing fancy, but it was mine and paid off in 3 years through aggressive extra payments. The renovation was my masterpiece. Gutted kitchen and installed custom cabinets, completely redid both bathrooms with high-end fixtures, refinished all hardwood floors, updated electrical and plumbing throughout. House went from dated 1980s mess to modern showcase that would have cost someone else $150,000 to achieve. Year 3. I landed contract to renovate high-end neighborhood development. 12 custom homes, complete gut renovations for wealthy clients who wanted everything perfect. Contract was worth $850,000 over 8 months. More money than I'd ever imagined making. That's when my family's attitude started changing. Suddenly, Jake wasn't just worker bee anymore. Dad started asking about my business, wanting to know how much money I was making, suddenly interested in construction industry. Mom would brag to her friends about her successful entrepreneur son, like she'd always supported my career. And Brittany? She went from insulting my work to trying to get me to fund her schemes. Jake, you should sponsor one of my posts, she'd say while I was eating lunch covered in sawdust from morning job. I could promote your business to my followers. It would be great cross-promotion. Her followers were mostly bots, fake accounts from overseas, and middle-aged perverts commenting fire emojis on her thirst traps. Real valuable demographic for residential construction targeting affluent homeowners. When I politely declined, she'd get pissy. You're so selfish. I'm trying to help you grow your business and you won't even support your own sister. Family is supposed to help family. Entitlement was unreal. This girl had never worked real day in her life, was completely supported by our parents at 25, and thought I owed her free marketing just because we shared DNA. Things got worse when she started dating this loser named Chad, who was supposedly crypto entrepreneur. Translation: unemployed guy who lost his trust fund gambling on digital coins and now lived with his parents while pretending to be business mogul. Chad convinced her she needed to level up her brand and think bigger. Chad was everything you'd expect. Backwards baseball cap, designer clothes bought with credit cards, constant name-dropping of successful people he'd supposedly met, and philosophy that traditional jobs are for sheep. He'd never held job for more than 6 months but considered himself expert on building wealth. They came up with this brilliant plan to start YouTube channel about luxury lifestyle on budget, where they'd review expensive restaurants, hotels, and products. The catch? They needed funding to maintain lifestyle they'd be reviewing. Their logic was flawless. They'd spend my money living luxuriously, document it for YouTube, become famous influencers, then pay me back from their earnings. What could go wrong? Brittany asked my parents for $15,000 to launch channel properly. When they couldn't afford it, shocking, considering they'd already blown their retirement savings on her college, she came to me. Jake, this is real business opportunity, she explained with PowerPoint presentations she'd obviously spent weeks on. Chad and I have whole thing planned out. We just need initial investment to cover expenses for first 6 months. You'd basically be angel investor. I asked to see their business plan. Their business plan was PowerPoint with stock photos and vague promises about monetization. No market research, no realistic revenue projections, no understanding of how YouTube actually works or how long it takes to build audience. We don't need all that corporate stuff, Chad said, dismissing my questions with a wave of his hand. Social media is about authenticity and vibes. You can't put vibes in spreadsheet. Right. I told them I wasn't interested. That's when Real Brittany came out. After I turned down Brittany's ridiculous YouTube scheme, family dynamics completely shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't successful, brother. They wanted to brag about. I was selfish jerk who was holding back family. Harassment started small. Brittany would make passive-aggressive comments about how some people forget where they came from and how real family supports each other's dreams. She'd post cryptic social media stories about fake people and blood being thicker than water until money gets involved. Then it escalated. She started posting subtle digs on social media about fake family members and people who get successful and abandon their loved ones. Her dozen real followers ate it up, commenting supportive messages about cutting toxic people out of your life, without knowing they were talking about her own brother. My parents joined pressure campaign. Dad would call asking for business advice, but really just fishing for information about my finances. How much did I charge per job? What were my profit margins? How much did I have saved? All innocent questions that felt like interrogation. Mom would guilt trip me about how disappointed they were that I wasn't helping Brittany achieve her potential. She'd compare me to other successful siblings who lifted up their families and hint that maybe I'd forgotten where I came from. Breaking point came at Thanksgiving dinner. I'd been working nonstop on major project, complete home renovation that required 12-hour days for 3 weeks straight, and was exhausted, but I showed up to try to keep some semblance of family relationship. Brittany spent entire meal talking about her upcoming projects and how she just needed one big break to become successful. Chad nodded along, occasionally throwing in buzzwords like synergy and viral potential, while contributing nothing useful to conversation. She'd prepared whole presentation about their YouTube idea, complete with competitor analysis, aka watching other YouTubers for a few hours, and revenue projections, completely made up numbers. They'd calculated they could make $50,000 per month within 6 months if they had proper funding. Then she turned to me. Jake, I've been thinking about what you said about needing business plan. What if we made this family business? You could be financial backer, I'd be creative director, and we could split profits. What profits? I asked. You've been doing this for 5 years and haven't made enough to cover your Starbucks budget. Her face went red. That's because I haven't had proper funding. Do you know how much money I could be making if I had resources to create quality content? Look at other influencers. They all had family support or rich boyfriends. I've been doing this on my own. Brittany, you're 25 years old and have never had a real job. Maybe start with something realistic before planning your media empire. That's when she exploded. Realistic? You mean like getting my hands dirty doing manual labor? Like being construction worker my whole life? I have talent, Jake. I have potential. Just because you're content being blue-collar, nobody doesn't mean I should settle for mediocrity. Room went silent. Even Chad looked uncomfortable. Dad cleared his throat. Jake, that was uncalled for. Brittany is pursuing her passion. Her passion! Dad, you and Mom have spent over $300,000 supporting her passion, and she's made maybe $2,000 total. At what point do we call this what it is? Spoiled brat playing pretend while adults pay her bills. Mom jumped in. Jake, she's your sister. We're supposed to support each other. Support goes both ways. What has she ever done to support me? She's never even acknowledged my success, let alone contributed anything to this family except bills. Brittany was crying now, manipulative kind where she could still talk clearly between sobs. I can't believe you're attacking me like this. All I've ever wanted was for my family to believe in me. You got lucky with your business, but that doesn't make you better than me. Lucky? Lucky? I worked 80-hour weeks for 7 years while you took selfies and spent other people's money. Belief doesn't pay bills, Brittany. Results do. That's when Chad made his fatal mistake. Dude, you need to check your privilege. Not everyone can just inherit business and call themselves successful. Some of us have to be creative and innovative. I stood up. Inherit? Inherit? I worked 80-hour weeks for 7 years to build my business. I paid my own way through college while your girlfriend racked up $250,000 in debt for useless degree. Don't you dare talk to me about privilege. Argument devolved from there. Voices raised, old grievances aired, lines crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. Dad accused me of forgetting my family now that I had money. Mom cried about how I was tearing family apart over petty jealousy. It ended with me walking out and not speaking to any of them for 3 months. That's when I got certified letter. My own family was suing me for $400,000, claiming I had unfairly benefited from family resources, and owed Brittany compensation for lost opportunities caused by my refusal to provide reasonable family support. Lawsuit alleged that by not investing in Brittany's business ventures, I had caused irreparable harm to her potential earnings, and that my success created implied obligation to support her endeavors. They actually argued that because we grew up in same household, my success was partially due to family investment and should be shared equally. Never mind that I'd been working and supporting myself since 16, while she'd been supported entirely by family money. It was complete nonsense, but it was also real. They actually filed papers, in court, against their own son and brother. I hired best attorney I could find and prepared for war. Lawsuit discovery process was brutal, but also enlightening. My lawyer was Shark, who specialized in business litigation. When she reviewed their filing, she literally laughed. Jake, this is one of weakest cases I've ever seen. They have no legal basis for any of these claims, but we're going to destroy them anyway. During depositions, truth about my family's finances came out. It was worse than I'd imagined. My parents had blown through their entire retirement savings funding Brittany's lifestyle. They'd taken out second mortgage on their house worth $45,000. Dad had cashed out his 401k early, paying massive penalties and taxes that cost them additional $8,000. They owed $85,000 in credit card debt across 12 different cards, all for Brittany's career. Numbers were staggering. Over 8 years, they'd spent $340,000 on her college, $265,000, living expenses, $48,000, equipment, $12,000, travel, $8,000, photo shoots, $4,000, courses, $2,500, and various schemes, $500. Her total earnings from influencing, $3,200. That's 99.1% loss rate for those keeping track. But best part was Brittany's deposition. My lawyer tore her apart. Miss Collins, you claim my client's refusal to fund your YouTube channel cost you $500,000 in potential earnings. What market research did you conduct to arrive at that figure? I don't need market research. I know my worth. Based on what? Your current income from social media is approximately $300 per year. How do you justify million-dollar valuation? You don't understand influencer space. Once you get right opportunity, everything explodes exponentially. I see. And how many of these explosions have you experienced in 7 years of social media work? I haven't had right support system. That's literally why we're here. It went on like this for 3 hours. Brittany couldn't answer basic questions about business plans, market analysis, or realistic projections. She kept falling back on, "You don't understand my industry," and with proper funding, anything is possible. When asked about her actual work schedule, she admitted to spending maybe 2 to 3 hours per day on content creation and couldn't explain what she did with rest of her time. When pressed about her engagement rates, she got defensive and claimed, "Quality followers matter more than quantity." Deposition transcripts read like comedy sketch. Meanwhile, my financial records told different story. 7 years of consistent growth, satisfied clients, repeat business, and steady expansion. I had $380,000 in business assets, $150,000 in personal savings, and zero debt except my business loan, which was ahead of payment schedule. Everything I'd built was documented, legitimate, and earned through actual work. Most damaging revelation came when my lawyer uncovered Brittany and Chad's real plan. They'd been researching my business assets and had basically planned to use any money I gave them as down payment on house, then flip it and pocket profit. Their YouTube channel was just cover story. They wanted free money to play real estate investor with zero knowledge or experience. Chad had been watching house flipping shows and convinced Brittany they could make easy money, buying, renovating, and selling houses. When this came out during Chad's deposition, he tried to play it off as diversifying our investment portfolio and building multiple revenue streams. My lawyer asked him to define investment portfolio. His answer, like having different ways to make money and stuff. These people wanted to sue me for $400,000, and their financial mastermind couldn't define basic investment terms. Chad's deposition was train wreck. When asked about his business experience, he listed crypto trading, lost $15,000 of his parents' money, drop shipping, made $200 in 6 months, and affiliate marketing, earned $50 total. His longest job was 3 months at cell phone store before getting fired for poor attendance. By time discovery wrapped up, we had them dead to rights. Frivolous lawsuit, no legal basis, clear pattern of financial irresponsibility, and evidence of attempted fraud. But my lawyer had better idea than just winning. Jake, they've destroyed their financial lives trying to support Brittany's delusions. They're about to lose their house, their credit is ruined, and they have no retirement savings. What if we don't just beat them in court? What if we make them pay for wasting everyone's time? She filed countersuit for malicious prosecution, legal fees, and damages to my business reputation. We demanded $150,000 plus attorney's fees. Trial lasted 3 days and was everything I'd hoped for. My lawyer presented our case like documentary on financial stupidity and entitled behavior. When Brittany took stand, it was beautiful. My lawyer had prepared perfectly. Miss Collins, you've testified that your brother owes you financial support. What legal basis do you have for this claim? Family should help family. He has money, and I need help with my business. I see. Are you familiar with legal concept of consideration in contract law? No. Do you understand difference between gift and loan? What? Miss Collins, have you ever taken business law class? I studied digital media. That's not what I asked. Have you studied any law, accounting, or business management? I don't need classes to understand business. I'm naturally entrepreneurial. Judge was taking notes and trying not to laugh. When Chad took stand, somehow it got worse. Mr. Peterson, you encouraged Miss Collins to pursue this lawsuit? What legal experience do you have? I watch a lot of legal shows. I swear, that was his actual answer. And what business experience do you have? I've been involved in several ventures. What were your profits from these ventures? It's not about immediate profits. It's about building long-term value. Mr. Peterson, yes or no? Have you ever turned profit from any business venture? Long pause. Not yet, but thank you, that's all. Judge didn't even deliberate. He dismissed their case immediately and granted our countersuit in full. I've been on bench for 18 years, Judge Morrison said. This is one of most frivolous lawsuits I've ever seen. Plaintiffs have presented no legal basis for their claims, and have clearly filed this action in bad faith. He ordered them to pay $125,000 in damages plus all my legal fees. Another $47,000. They had 30 days to pay or face asset seizure. As we left courthouse, Brittany was crying, and Chad was ranting about corrupt judges and system being rigged against entrepreneurs. My parents looked like they'd aged 10 years. Within 2 weeks of judgment, reality hit my family like freight train. They couldn't pay $172,000 they owed me. Not even close. My lawyer started asset seizure proceedings. We put liens on their house, their cars, Dad's tools, anything of value. That's when begging started. Dad tried tough guy approach initially, then broke down completely. Jake, please. We're going to lose everything. We made mistake, okay? We know that now. But we're still your parents. Parents don't sue their children, I replied. You made your choice. Most pathetic calls came from Brittany. First, anger. You're destroying family over money. Then, manipulation. Jake, I've learned my lesson. I'm going to get real job and change my life. Then, desperate bargaining. What if I worked for your company? You could garnish my wages directly. Finally, complete breakdown. Jake, please. Chad left me when he found out about money. I have nothing. Mom and Dad might have to declare bankruptcy. You're literally destroying our entire family. Funny thing was, she still didn't get it. Even while begging me for mercy, she couldn't acknowledge what she'd done wrong. 3 months after judgment, they defaulted on payment. My lawyer moved to seize their assets. House went up for auction. Dad's truck got repossessed. They had to move into a 2-bedroom apartment in the worst part of town. Dad got fired from dealership when they found out about wage garnishment. Mom had to take full-time job at call center for $12 an hour. Brittany moved in with them and got job at Target. Her social media career died overnight when she couldn't afford to maintain her image. Final call came from Dad 6 months later. He'd aged 20 years and sounded completely broken. Jake, I know you hate us. I know we messed up beyond repair. But your mother is having health problems, and we can't afford her medications. I'm not asking you to forgive us. I'm asking you to have mercy. For first time since this started, I felt something. Not sympathy. They'd earned every bit of their suffering. But I felt complete. They'd destroyed themselves pursuing fantasy that they deserved my success. They'd chosen Brittany's delusions over reality, entitlement over responsibility, lawsuits over family. And they'd lost everything. I told Dad I'd think about it and hung up. 3 days later, I had my lawyer draft offer. I'd forgive remaining debt, about $140,000 under specific conditions. 1. Brittany had to publicly post video acknowledging that her influencer career was failure and that she'd been supported by family money for 8 years while producing nothing of value. 2. My parents had to write and sign detailed letter acknowledging their favoritism, their poor financial decisions, and their responsibility for lawsuit. 3. All 3 had to agree to zero contact with me for 5 years minimum. 4. If any of them ever spoke publicly about me or contacted me during that period, full debt would be reinstated immediately. They agreed within hours. Brittany's confession video was beautiful. No makeup, no filters, just broken 26-year-old admitting she'd wasted years of her life and hundreds of thousands of dollars chasing fantasy. She looked exactly like what she was. Failed wannabe influencer working retail and living with her parents. Video got more views than anything she'd ever posted. Comments were brutal but fair. My parents' letter was 4 pages of acknowledgement about their failures. They admitted favoritism, poor decisions, financial irresponsibility, and frivolous lawsuit. Reading it felt like getting apology I'd needed for 20 years. When my lawyer delivered debt forgiveness papers, I felt weight of 15 years finally lift off my shoulders. I was free. My business was thriving. My family couldn't hurt me anymore.